Chapter 1. The First Cracks in Eternity. There are endings that arrive like storms, roaring and obvious, and there are endings that begin as whispers so soft that even gods fail to hear them. The universe shifting in ways imperceptible until fate is already sealed. And so it was that the greatest doom ever faced by creation did not begin with an explosion or a villain's proclamation, but with a quiet tremor in the fabric of reality, the first subtle fracture in eternity, unnoticed by most and ignored by many, a shiver running through the marrow of existence that signaled something profoundly wrong in the architecture of time and space. Long before worlds collided and cosmic civilizations burned, before universes bled into one another like dying stars collapsing into cosmic night, there was peace, not peace born of harmony, but peace born of complacence, the kind that lingers when no one realizes they are standing on the edge of a precipice. For eons, the multiverse thrived in infinite branching realities, each a reflection of another, countless lives unfolding in patterns familiar yet utterly new. A universe where Tony Stark never picked up a bottle, another where Peter Parker never donned a mask, a reality where Reed Richards died young and the Fantastic Four never existed, worlds where mutants ruled, worlds where mutants never emerged, worlds born in violence, worlds born in hope. Infinity stretched beyond comprehension, and existence believed itself eternal, and yet, somewhere beyond mortal perception, a law older than gods and older than thought itself shifted, not broken yet, but strained, a cosmic note slightly off pitch in the perfect music of creation. The first incursion was not marked by thunder or cosmic tears, but by silence, a void so absolute that even watchers failed to sense it, a universe erased not with violence but absence, as though the cosmos had exhaled and chosen not to inhale again. One universe vanished, then another, no funeral, no scream, no memory. The multiverse had begun to starve, one reality at a time, and no one knew. On Earth 616, life continued with familiar rhythm. Heroes fought villains, governments argued over power, gods quarreled with mortals, and cosmic forces turned their gaze elsewhere, believing creation stable. But a faint tremor rippled across the firmament when the very first evidence appeared. A star system on the edge of known space disappeared, not consumed by black hole nor devoured by Galactus, simply gone, as if erased from a chalkboard. Astronomers whispered of anomalies, mystics felt an ache behind the eyes, sorcerers sensed the faint taste of dust in the air when performing spells once effortless. Reed Richards, scientist, explorer, father, and one of the few minds capable of perceiving the universe's heartbeat, awoke at night to equations that made no sense, cosmic constants shifting as though someone tilted the foundation of mathematics, rewriting the shape of truth. Elsewhere, T'Challa watched Wakanda's cosmic sensors flicker, readings inconsistent, energy signatures appearing and vanishing in impossible patterns, like ghosts of worlds brushing against reality. Even Doctor Strange felt a strange heaviness in his spells, an echo of something vast and dissonant pressing against the walls of reality. Yet no prophecy warned him, no cosmic entity spoke of the end. And for a time, life continued, heroes laughing, fighting, living, unaware that creation had begun to rot from the outside in, like fruit untouched yet dying beneath its skin. Then came the first true omen, not a prophecy, but a body. A being fell through reality, landing broken and burning in a crater of collapsed glass and twisted metal on a world far from Earth. She called herself the Black Swan, and her first breath in this universe was not a plea for aid, but a grim whisper. This universe is doomed. She came from a dead universe, one devoured by an event that defied language. collision of realities, the crushing of entire existences against one another, like fragile glass spheres pressed between unseen hands. She did not speak of villains nor gods, but of inevitability, a multiverse folding in upon itself, collapsing like a cosmic lung failing to fill. They end not as battle but as law, and behind her words lay a name spoken in reverent terror. The Beyonders, ancient forces beyond gods, architects of destruction who did not hate creation, but dismantled it as one might dismantle a machine no longer needed. Her arrival was not warning alone, it was prophecy embodied. She told of incursions, moments when two universes collide at a single point, their Earth, and only one could survive. If neither Earth was destroyed, both universes died. The rules were simple, horrifying, absolute, and in that revelation lay an impossible truth. To save a universe, one must destroy another. To preserve life, one must erase infinite lives. There was no heroism, only choice stained in inevitability. Reed Richards listened first, not with fear but with determination, his mind racing faster than grief could form, constructing model, equations, frameworks to understand what cannot be understood. Tony Stark learned next, skeptical yet seduced by the challenge of preventing a cosmic apocalypse through engineering and intellect. T'Challa absorbed the knowledge in silence, the weight of leadership bearing down like centuries compressed into seconds. Namor, king of oceans and ruler of pride sharper than tridents, heard not doom but opportunity twisted through honor, survival at any cost. Black Bolt, silent monarch of Attilan, bowed his head in solemn acceptance, knowing that destiny seldom offers mercy to kings. Stephen Strange consulted ancient forces and found them trembling, beast joined, mind vast yet heart fragile. And together they revived something they once vowed to never again assemble, the Illuminati, a council of hidden protectors, or secret tyrants, depending on one's truth, bound not by law but necessity. Their purpose was simple and monstrous, stop the end of everything. Their burden was unbearable, decide which worlds live and which worlds burn. For the first time in history, humanity's greatest minds stood not to fight evil but to negotiate with extinction itself. The Black Swan, imprisoned and interrogated, spoke calmly of survival through annihilation, of worlds burning like candles snuffed by cosmic wind, of the futility of morality when existence itself dies. Her words slithered into minds like venom, forcing them to confront truths that heroes were never meant to hold. Sometimes, to save the innocent, one must kill the innocent. Sometimes, protecting existence means staining the soul. And as the Illuminati studied the first collapsing realities, they witnessed the impossible. An entire universe winked out, stars extinguished like sparks in a tide, nebulae crushed into silence, civilizations erased in the time it takes to breathe, not through war, not through entropy, through law. A cosmic rule rewritten, and in that absence they felt something worse than terror, irrelevance. Powers meant nothing. Avengers, X-Men, gods, empires, all dust beneath forces that ignored them like ants beneath a storm. Yet they still chose to fight. It is human nature, or perhaps heroic delusion, to resist the inevitable even when logic demands surrender. So began the secret war before the secret wars. A war beneath the surface of reality, fought not in headlines but in shadows, where heroes broke rules they once sanctified. The Illuminati built weapons capable of planetary destruction, world killers constructed in silence beneath Wakanda's soil, reactors humming with the promise of genocidal salvation. They locked away the Infinity Gems, knowing they could shatter under pressure they were not forged to withstand. They swore secrecy not to protect themselves but to protect hope. Or what world survives learning its gods can die and its heroes contemplate destroying other worlds to save their own? Night after night they gathered in hidden sanctums, staring at screens that displayed the countdown to next incursion. Then the next, then the next. Plans formed, arguments sharpened, ideals cracked. Namor demanded readiness to destroy whole universes. Reed argued for solutions beyond violence. Tony sought machines, systems, armor against fate. Strange offered magic, dangerous and heavy with cost. T'Challa prayed for another way, unwilling yet unable to look away. Beast tried to find hope in numbers that refused to yield comfort. Black Bolt spoke nothing, yet his silence weighed more than screams, and above all stood the truth no one dared say aloud. Every universe lost felt like a failure, every incursion a reminder that even gods die. The first incursion they faced shook them to their core. Two Earths pressed together across dimensional fault lines, cities mirrored and trembling above one. Another like twinned reflections on shattered glass. They built a bridge of choice, destroy the other planet or watch both universes collapse. They hesitated. Heroes hesitate. They searched for alternatives until time bled away, and at the last second, salvation arrived not through brilliance but through brutality. Namor pressed the detonator. The other world burned. Two universes lived, one died, and the Illuminati understood a new truth. Lines once sacred could be crossed, and once crossed, they no longer looked like lines at all. Thus began the quiet apocalypse, one universe at a time, defended by hands shaking with guilt. They fought shadows, collapsing stars, realities bending like wounded beasts. They failed many times. They succeeded only by sacrificing pieces of themselves. And through it all, the first cracks in the multiverse widened, silence between stars growing heavy like breath held too long. Heroes still saved cities, still fought villains, still smiled in public while dying in private. The world did not know, could not, must not. For how does one tell humanity that tomorrow is not promised, not because of war, or famine or plague, but because reality itself is ending? And so, as the first chapter of this cosmic tragedy closes, we do not see battlefields or triumphant poses. We see weary figures staring into endless night, holding the knowledge that everything they stand for is collapsing, and that the only tools they possess to save existence may destroy the very idea of heroism. The multiverse trembles, destiny shifts, and the quiet before annihilation settles over creation like a shroud. Calm, terrifying, absolute. The Black Swan did not arrive in the Marvel Universe like a herald, nor like a conqueror, nor even like a frightened refugee. She came instead like a shadow, torn loose from the end of the world, a woman shaped by the death of infinities, carrying in her gaze the knowledge of a truth so vast and cruel that every word she spoke felt like prophecy, carved in bleeding stone, a truth that would haunt those who listened long after her voice fell silent. When she was first discovered, a lone figure among the flaming ruins of a colliding Earth, stepping through explosions and falling cities with an eerie calm, she was not broken or begging for mercy. She was resigned, almost serene, like someone who had watched countless apocalypses and now saw nothing shocking in one more. The Illuminati imprisoned her not out of cruelty, but uncertainty. They did not yet understand if she was threat, omen, or something far worse, witness. And so she sat in a stasis cell, skin illuminated by dim blue light, chains more symbolic than necessary, for she did not struggle, did not argue, did not bargain. She waited, because she had seen this before, in world after world, universe after universe. Heroes reaching for questions their morality could not bear to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost tender. but beneath that softness lay steel forged in cosmic fire. She called them naive, not with contempt, but with pity, like a teacher mourning the students who refuse to believe the lesson that will save them. Reed Richards, eager for answers, peppered her with questions. What causes the incursions? Who commands them? How to stop them? But she offered no simple truths, only fragments that felt like the edge of a nightmare. The multiverse is dying. There's no escape. Survival demands sacrifice. Mercy is a luxury the end of everything cannot afford. She spoke of a great chain of reality collapsing link by link, of stumbling across worlds already broken, screaming, begging for time they could not have. She described standing beneath skies bleeding red as two Earths collided in slow, magnificent terror, continents folding upon themselves like paper, oceans boiling, stars flickering out one by one. She did not tremble as she spoke. Memory, for her, had ceased to wound and instead hardened into inevitability. Namor studied her with calculating interest. Here was someone who spoke his language, not the language of idealism or hope, but survival. T'Challa listened in silence, feeling the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders and the impossible burden of choosing between his people and infinite others. Tony Stark scribbled equation while pretending not to be shaken, while deep inside a quiet dread whispered that this enemy could not be defeated with armor nor innovation alone. Strange stood half shadow, sensing in her a strange energy that tasted of universes collapsed into prayer, and he wondered not what she was, but what she had become to survive what she described. And Black Bolt, the Silent King, heard something deeper, not doom alone, but truth. Truth, spoken with the calm certainty of someone who had accepted damnation long ago to preserve one breath more of existence. Swan told them of the Black Priests, disciples of destruction, who traveled between universes to enact necessary murder. She told them of the map makers, mechanical scavengers left behind when worlds died, harvesting corpses of creation, and she spoke of the Ivory Kings, the Beyonders, beings beyond cosmic hierarchy, whose motives were incomprehensible because they predated purpose itself. They were not evil, not cruel, not righteous. They simply were, and their design or whim had decided that all that existed must now cease. The Illuminati, who had thought themselves keepers of impossible knowledge, felt suddenly like children staring at a storm too vast to name. The Black Swan was not merely witness, however, she was soldier, emissary, product of survival, shape, not in choice but in necessity. She spoke of destroying Earths as though it were arithmetic, not genocide, not moral crisis, but step required to breathe one more day. When Reed questioned her humanity, she smiled, a small sad curve of lips that looked almost tender, and replied that humanity dies when worlds do, and what remains is only what can withstand the end. She did not preach despair, she preached pragmatism sharpened into weapon, and her presence alone began to chip at the Illuminati's convictions, for she planted seeds, small thoughts, dangerous thoughts, that whispered that perhaps heroism itself was the lie, that survival demanded uglier truths. When she described how she watched her universe die, that she had seen its skies tear open like wounds and cities float as debris in cosmic storms, her voice did not break because sorrow was privilege of those who still believe time can heal. She chose life over mourning because the dead do not need tears. Her calm brought dread, because in her they saw not madness but knowledge, and knowledge is the most terrifying thing one can possess at the end of days. The Illuminati debated her words long into the night, each man wrestling ghosts of their morality. Tony insisted the solutions existed if they pushed further, built more, dared more. Namor argued that delaying the hard choice only increased the cost later, Strange whispered that some problems cannot be bargained with, that there are cosmic truths older than victory. Reed clung to belief that intelligence could solve anything, but doubt gnawed at him. The knowledge that genius had limits and those limits may have been reached. T'Challa prayed in silence, convictions of battling responsibility, and felt Wakanda's legacy tremble beneath impossible choice. They did not trust her, but they could not ignore her, and so she remained neither prisoner nor ally, but catalyst, a mirror showing them not what they were, but what they may need to become. When the next incursion came, they fought not only with machines and ideologies, but with her voice echoing behind every decision. Destroy the other Earth or die. It is one thing to know sacrifice is necessary. It is another to hold a detonator while billions of voices scream across the veil. And that second incursion forced them to acknowledge something too painful to speak aloud. They were not ready. They had prepared weapons, but not souls. Reed hesitated because he still believed in miracles. Tony hesitated because he still believed in invention. Strange hesitated because he still believed in destiny. T'Challa hesitated because he still believed in good. But Namor, who had lost kingdoms, people, love, pride, and had rebuilt himself from ruin too many times to romanticize suffering, did not hesitate. The world died, the universe lived, and a fracture formed among the Illuminati more dangerous than any cosmic collision. The Black Swan watched through her containment field, not with glee but with confirmation. She saw predictable patterns, heroes refusing to accept cost, clinging to virtue until virtue became blade turned inward. She spoke later, not triumphant but calm, telling them that hesitation was weakness, and weakness killed universes. She called Reed a dreamer, Tony a hopeful child, Strange a coward cloaked in mysticism, T'Challa a king chained by morality. Only Namor she acknowledged as someone capable of surviving the end. But even Namor felt her words like rot. He did not seek her approval, only the grim satisfaction of knowing he had chosen survival over sentiment. Swan did not ask to be free. She did not need freedom. Her cage was not prison. It was stage, where she revealed truths they refused to confront. Over time, she became a constant presence, a voice that never pleaded or threatened, only observed, questioned, dismantled their idealism like surgeon, taking apart a body to show where disease hides. And she planted a question in all of them, a question that lingered like poison and prophecy both. When you must choose between your home and infinite others, what will you become? Soon, they discovered what she already knew. The incursions were accelerating, worlds dying faster, timelines collapsing like dominoes in cosmic wind. They tried machines, antimatter bombs, spells, alliances with cosmic forces. They sought titans, celestials, even the living tribunal, and found his corpse floating in space, executed like a criminal by forces whose existence defied theology and logic alike. That was the moment the Black Swan's truth crystallized. No higher power was coming to save them. The universe's shepherds were dead, the cosmic hierarchy broken, law abandoned by the very gods who wrote it. The Illuminati carried that knowledge like chains around their throats. They stood alone at the edge of ending, their choices narrowing, hope thinning. The Black Swan remained in her cell, but her presence was everywhere. In their doubts, in their anger, in their growing acceptance that the universe was not kind, and salvation demanded sacrifice so vast that even legends trembled at its weight. And through it all, she never asked for release, because she did not need escape. She already knew the universe would break long before her prison did. The Black Swan was not prophet nor villain, not ally nor prisoner. She was something more terrifying, truth. And as the Illuminati walked deeper into mortal night, they began to understand something no hero ever wants to face. The end doesn't turn good men evil. It reveals what good truly means when mercy becomes extinction. The multiverse was cracking, universes were falling, and one whisper echoed louder each day, not shouted, but spoken in tired resignation. You cannot save everyone. In the end, the only question is who you choose to save. Chapter 3: Illuminati, a council in the dark. There are councils born in sunlight, forged from hope and idealism, and there are councils born underground, their foundations not in trust but necessity, their charter not celebration but dread. The Illuminati were never meant to be heroes in this story, but caretakers of a dying reality, men who once saved worlds now forced to choose which worlds must burn. Their meeting table not symbol of unity, but altar of inevitability, as they gathered in secret beneath Wakanda's soil, where vibranium walls could hold secrets, even when hearts could not. Reed Richards sat at the head not from arrogance but burden, the architect of ideas too vast for comfort, chalk dust from desperate equations clinging to his sleeves like ghosts of solutions that never came. He stared at the glowing projection of two Earths colliding in slow, agonizing descent, his fingers twitching as though equations still formed in the air where hope once lived. But mathematics did not comfort him now. Numbers spoke the language of doom too clearly. Beside him stood T'Challa, king of Wakanda, shoulders broad with lineage and duty, his voice calm but heavy, every syllable carrying the weight of a monarch forced to choose not the welfare of a nation, but the survival of existence itself. His kingdom had flourished through centuries of isolation and wisdom, and now he sat in a chamber where no throne could protect him. Knowing Wakanda's strength meant nothing against the death of all realities. Tony Stark paced, restless like a machine running at full capacity, mind spinning through scenarios like armor simulations, searching for a loophole, a backdoor in fate's programming. He had built weapons to end wars before they began, but this war was not one he could prevent, only delay, and that truth gnawed at him worse than shrapnel once gnawed at his chest. Doctor Strange watched with sorcerer's detachment, haunted by something more profound. He had consulted spells older than humanity, relics that hummed with divine terror, gods who once whispered answers, now silent or dead. He knew the mystical balance was collapsing, that magic's foundations trembled like a dying star, and the realization that no incantation could rewrite cosmic law left him hollow, a physician watching a patient whose pulse is fading and knowing every medicine is futile. Namor stood across from them, arms folded like a king refusing to kneel even here, where power meant nothing against inevitability. He had tasted ruin and rebuilt empires from ruins, and so he did not fight the grim truth. He embraced it, convinced survival demanded brutality, that soft hearts kill worlds, and every moment they delayed action made them weaker, softer, closer to death. Black Bolt, silent and inscrutable, observed like a monument carved from duty, his voice locked away because even a whisper could shatter reality. Yet his eyes screamed a truth none wished to face. Kings are not chosen to be loved, but to bear burdens others cannot bear. Beast, drawn into their circle not as mutant ambassador, but as mind capable of understanding the shape of extinction, scribbled notes with trembling fingers, part scientist, part philosopher, part desperate man clinging to hope through intellect, though even he saw the equations bending toward oblivion. They were brilliant, powerful, righteous, and utterly helpless before a law that broke gods. And because heroes could not hold this knowledge, because the world would shatter under the truth that salvation required unthinkable acts, they swore themselves to silence. It was not oath of pride but shame, the awareness that telling the world would destroy it before the incursions could. In that chamber they debated not villains but themselves. Should they build machines to destroy other Earths? Could they justify mass extinction to prevent universal extinction? Was there difference between survival and conquest when choices narrowed to two? Reed argued for time, for ingenuity, for faith in intellect. Tony argued for preparation, contingency plans layered like armor plates around reality. Strange argued fate must be bent before it breaks humanity. Beast argued to search deeper into cosmic laws. T'Challa argued to preserve morality until the last breath, because the universe without ethics is not worth saving. Namor argued that mercy was cowardice when the stakes were reality itself, that hesitation would kill more innocence than action. Their arguments grew louder, sharper, quieter, heavier, a spiral of morality and survival where no answer felt noble and every answer felt monstrous. They assembled weapons that should never exist, planet-killing bombs hidden beneath Wakanda's earth, devices humming with silent promise of genocide. Strange performed rituals of forbidden sight, knowing each spell carved at his soul. Reed and Tony shattered sleep chasing impossible equations. T'Challa prayed in stolen moments for a miracle that never came. Namor sharpened his resolve like blade against stone, waiting for a moment others would falter so he could act. Beast lost faith in math as certainty vanished. Black Bolt watched, silent, witness to the slow death of heroism. The incursions came faster, each one a countdown, each countdown a moral test, each test a fracture in their unity. When they stood on dying worlds, watching skies turn red and two Earths press closer like jaws closing on prey, they felt humanity peel away under cosmic weight. Reed saw dimensions collapse like paper burning. Strange felt magic recoil as if creation itself sobbed. Tony clenched fists until metal armor cut into flesh. T'Challa whispered prayers into void. Beast trembled. Black Bolt lowered eyes. Namor did not flinch. Reed tried to find alternatives. Tony tried to build better weapons. Strange tried to barter with cosmic forces. They all tried, until trying felt like drowning in inevitability. They destroyed worlds, and each time they did, a piece of themselves died, a fracture deeper than any cosmic break, the truth settling like ice beneath ribs. Heroism has limits, and they were living past them. And as they continued, guilt and fear grew roots in their hearts, but so did grim certainty. Their eyes dimmed, their voices quieted, their faces hardened. They met not as allies but as caretakers of apocalypse, their hope rusting into resignation as they watched universes wink out like dying fireflies, stars collapsing into echoing silence. And yet, they continued because choice was illusion, because survival demanded burden, because humanity does not surrender even when everything suggests surrender is wisdom. But as they walked deeper into this secret war, the cracks between them widened, not from hate but inevitability. They had begun this council believing they could save the multiverse. Now they continued only to delay its funeral, and in that chamber beneath Wakanda, in dim light flickering like dying stars, 7 of the greatest minds and spirits in history sat in silence, not planning victory, but confronting the truth that heroes can fail, that gods can break, that reality can bleed, and that sometimes the greatest courage is simply continuing to fight when hope has already died. Their story had no triumph in this moment, only quiet, heavy acceptance of duty, darker than any villain's ambition, and the knowledge that the universe would not remember their suffering, only the ashes they left behind. They had become the line between existence and oblivion, and that line was fraying. Chapter 4: The Death of Worlds. The end of a universe is not always heralded by thunder or prophecy. Sometimes it arrives with a hush, like the soft closing of a door no one realized was open. and the Illuminati learned quickly that the death of worlds was not cinematic, not mythic, not bathed in operatic glory. It was quiet, mechanical, inevitable, the cold machinery of cosmic law grinding existence into dust while they stood helpless at its edge. They witnessed stars flicker out, not because they burned their fuel, but because the framework beneath reality fractured, galaxies collapsing like dying neurons in a brain shutting down. Reed Richards once dreamed of exploring every universe, imagining a multiverse as playground of infinite discovery. Now he watched through screens and portals as countless Earths bled into void, each one a mirror of their own, worlds where children played and lovers kissed, where revolutions sparked and peace treaties were signed, where heroes rose and villains fell, where humanity made mistakes and miracles, all erased with the same indifferent precision as a candle snuffed beneath two fingers. The Illuminati stood upon platforms suspended between collapsing skies, machines humming around them like heart monitors in a failing hospital, and saw two Earths approaching each other like reflections trying to occupy the same mirror, blue and green spheres trembling as space warped and gravity screamed. They felt heat without flame, pressure without weight, dread without sound. There was no battlefield music, only an eerie hum like the universe holding its breath. Tony Stark, who once believed every problem had a technological answer, whispered calculations under his breath like prayers, armor plates shifting restlessly, as if they too feared entropy. His mind, once a furnace of solutions, now felt like glass cracking under strain. Strange floated slightly above ground, cloak coiling like anxious serpent, incantations forming and dissolving on his lips as magic rebelled against a problem older than sorcery itself. He felt ancient entities turn away, not out of malice but helplessness. T'Challa placed his hand upon the earth before him, foreign soil yet sacred in finality, whispering an apology to a world that would not hear. King humbled by cosmic cruelty, forced to witness genocide not by blade but law. Beast clutched his tablet like a lifeboat in an ocean storm, trying to catalog phenomena beyond physics, trying to find meaning where logic drowned. Black Bolt stood motionless, face carved in grief, hands clasped behind back like monarch at a funeral, knowing one whisper could shatter mountains but none could stop destiny. But Namor, arms crossed, jaw set like granite against ocean tide, stared at the encroaching blue sphere above with neither awe nor fear, only grim recognition. He had known destruction intimately, kingdoms drowned, people slaughtered, and here he witnessed destruction not as tragedy but as currency, the cost of existence. They had prepared weapons, antimatter bombs, dimensional lances, devices forbidden by conscience yet required by circumstance. The first time, hesitation nearly killed them all. They searched bodies of cosmic thought for another solution, a miracle, a loophole, but none came. The beams of unmaking fired, planetary crusts shuddered, oceans lifted and vaporized, continents cracked like brittle bone, and a world full of life died in silence. No screams crossed dimensions, no last prayers reached them. Only light, then darkness, then stillness. Reed watched his reflection shatter. Tony felt bile burn his throat. T'Challa closed his eyes. Strange trembled. Beast collapsed onto one knee. Black Bolt bowed his head. Namor alone remained upright, spine straight, because he refused to bend to despair. Yet even he felt something inside him harden further, like steel tempering under grief. And that was only the beginning. Incursions came again, and again, and again. They built more weapons, each more monstrous than the last, devices capable not only of destroying Earths, but entire star systems if triggered improperly. They hid them beneath Wakanda's sacred earth, beneath oceans, beneath mountains, praying no one would find them, terrified someone would need to use them. They experimented. Portals, energy fields, time dilation. Nothing worked. They summoned cosmic beings, either dead or silent. They consulted artifacts, powerless. They sought counsel from gods, indifferent or gone. Every battle against annihilation was not victory but postponement. Every postponement demanded sin. They destroyed worlds, handpicked for having no heroes, no defenders capable of stopping them, believing that mercy meant choosing the least innocent. Reed stopped tracking the number of lives erased. The math became too heavy, the guilt too vast. Tony recorded logs in private, voice cracking as he rationalized necessity, then cursed himself for believing it. T'Challa wrote names of fallen worlds into a coded record no one would ever read. A king recording the dead he could not protect. Strange began to bargain with darker forces, beating against mystical walls like dying heartbeat, trying to push magic past its limits. Each spell cost him pieces of soul, but he continued, because failure cost infinity. Beast stopped writing entirely at times, staring at blank screens as though language itself rebelled. Meanwhile, Namor waited for the moment when delay died and resolve must ignite, certain his comrades' resolve would crumble when confronted with true necessity. Black Bolt said nothing, but his silence weighed like verdict, and all the while the Black Swan watched from her containment, knowing they were learning the rules she had been raised under. Survival demands blood, and those who refuse to offer sacrifice will be consumed with their ideals. There were nights, if nights can exist during apocalypse, when Reed sat in the dark, hands shaking, staring at photos of his family, listening to Franklin breathe in another room, knowing he had condemned universes to keep this one child breathing, and wondering if any father in any universe would judge him. Tony sat at bars he designed to appear empty, drinking not to numb pain but because waking reality hurt more than hangovers. T'Challa meditated until bones ached, trying to hold the last fragments of honor. Strange prayed to forces he once commanded, knowing they no longer listened. Beast paced laboratories, whispering apologies to star systems. Namor swam through oceans at night, feeling waves against skin like absolution denied. Black Bolt walked Atalan's quiet halls, wife and subjects asleep, knowing he kept secrets that could break their world. Their souls corroded, not in one strike, but drip by drip, compromise by compromise, like rust spreading beneath gold paint. They asked themselves daily, are we still heroes, or executioners preparing the universe's eulogy? But still they fought, because alternative was surrender. Each incursion killed something in them. Each delay gave hope another fragile day. They were haunted not by enemies but by silence. The silence of worlds erased, the silence of loved ones they could not burden, the silence of gods who had abandoned the board. The death of worlds was never dramatic, just heat, light, shuddering, stillness, and in that stillness the Illuminati began to see themselves, not as saviors, not as villains, but as custodians of a dying era. Men preserving a candle in a hurricane, knowing flame would go out regardless, but refusing to let it die unnoticed. And through every act, something crept into the air around them. Doubt, distrust, fractures forming in brotherhood. They saved their universe by murdering others, by playing judge, executioner, and mourner. And each time they destroyed a world, their eyes dimmed, like stars losing brilliance one collapse at a time. It was in these moments, quiet, soul-splitting, unseen, that the Illuminati understood a truth darker than any cosmic prophecy. Saving a universe can cost your soul, and in choosing who dies to let you live, you become less hero, more answer to a question the universe never intended you to ask. But still, they breathed. Still they fought. Still they delayed oblivion. Because even as universes crumbled like dying notes in the song of creation, they clung to the stubborn belief that one more day alive mattered, that existence deserved a chance, no matter the cost. The deaths mounted, the guilt grew, the moral wounds widened, and yet, in this horror, they continued, because the only thing more terrifying than destroying worlds was letting your own be destroyed. And so heroes became executioners, not by desire, but by duty. A duty no mortal was built to carry, a duty killing pieces of them with every breath. The death of worlds continued, and so did they, weary, fractured, haunted, but unbroken. For now, Chapter 5. When Heroes Fail. There comes a moment in every great tragedy when the myth of heroism cracks, when the world looks not to shining symbols in the sky but to broken figures standing beneath unbearable weight. And secret wars reached that moment long before worlds burned, for the Illuminati did not simply fight a cosmic force. They fought the slow collapse of what they believed themselves to be, realizing not with sudden shock but with creeping dread that ideals bend when pressed against extinction, that morality frays when the universe demands choices no mortal heart should ever face. In the beginning they believed they could win, that brilliance and courage could repel annihilation. Reed Richards tried to map the death of infinity like a doctor diagnosing a patient already gone, whispering equations as if mathematics could plead with entropy. Yet every formula he wrote fractured like time itself, numbers collapsing under truths too vast to compute. Tony Stark poured himself into machinery and desperation, armor evolving faster than grief could slow him, sleepless nights sewing metal and fear together until his suit felt less like protection and more like coffin. His brilliance became frantic, jagged, the quiet terror of a man who built his life on the conviction that every problem had a solution, now choking on the one problem he could not engineer his way out of. T'Challa visited ancient Wakandan shrines, kneeling in silence before statues of kings who faced famine and war and plague, knowing none of them had ever confronted the end of reality itself. He asked the spirits not for strength, but forgiveness, because he had promised his people protection, yet now protected existence at the cost of countless lives they would never know. Stephen Strange opened grimoires once sealed by sanctity, summoned forbidden spirits, stared into mirrors that reflected futures where magic screamed and broke, and each time he cast a spell to delay the inevitable, he felt another fragment of himself detach, like feathers plucked one by one from the wings of faith. Beast, ever the scholar, tried to bury the apocalypse beneath research, believing that if he could name the force-destroying worlds, he could tame it. Yet every answer spawned another question, every solution died in its cradle, and Hank McCoy began to understand that intellect without hope becomes torment, a mind circling a sinking drain of inevitability. Black Bolt, silent ruler of Inhumans, carried knowledge heavier than mountains, knowing that one scream could shatter continents yet could not shake the grip of cosmic law. That prophecy and power mean nothing when reality itself is sentenced to death. He endured in stoic silence, watching those around him break in whispers and rage, bearing everything because silence was his only shield against madness. And Namor, proud, wounded, sovereign of a kingdom drowned in its own tragedies, hardened into the one truth he always held, survival is not noble, survival is necessary, and those who cling to ideals in the face of annihilation are not saints but fools. He watched his allies waver, saw their hesitation as betrayal of existence itself, and resentment brewed inside him like tide waiting to become storm. They failed first in secret, small moments unnoticed by the world they saved. Reed missed one of Franklin's drawings pinned to the fridge because he was calculating cosmic decay. Tony skipped meals and conversations, armor becoming skin, humanity peeling away beneath alloy and purpose. T'Challa missed a Wakandan council meeting, leaving thousands to oversee a nation while he plotted to protect a universe that would never know his sacrifice. Strange lost days meditating in dimensions where time bled, hearing echoes of futures where humanity wept in silence. Beast forgot to answer a single message from old friends, swallowed by equations that felt like funeral hymns. Black Bolt held Medusa as she slept, wondering if kings are allowed to love when love distracts from duty. Namor stood before ocean waves crashing against broken Atlantean statues, knowing he had already been villain to the surface world and now might become executioner to all others. Their failures grew, they fought incursions, yet occasionally arrived too late, watching worlds collide like eggs smashing under celestial thumbs, feeling heat like divine breath against their skin as they escaped by seconds, space folding around them like jaws closing on prayer. They debated alternatives until voices cracked. Could they relocate an entire Earth, shift it dimensionally, build cosmic shielding? Reed tried. Tony tried. Strange tried. They failed. Each failure rewrote them. Reed's optimism curdled into quiet obsession. Tony's hope sharpened into paranoia. T'Challa's nobility strained beneath guilt. Strange's faith thinned like thread pulled taut. Beast's curiosity turned to dread. Black Bolt's silence became confession. Namor's pride calcified into certainty. He alone understood the world's truth. And yet, they still wore masks before the world. The Avengers continued battles on Earth. Mutants navigated their turmoil. Cosmic heroes roamed stars unaware the sky had the expiration date. To the universe, nothing seemed wrong. But in dark rooms beneath Wakanda, and in hidden bases carved into space-time, the finest minds of existence felt themselves slipping. They began lying to themselves first. This is temporary. We will find another way. We can still be who we were. But then came the lies to others. Missing missions justified by false emergencies, unexplained absence, forced smiles masking terror. They protected humanity not just from the end, but from knowing their heroes were failing. And then, worst of all, they failed each other. Trust, once thread binding kings and geniuses, frayed. Suspicion curled like smoke in corners of their meetings. Namor saw weakness in hesitation. T'Challa saw danger in Namor's cold resolve. Reed and Tony clashed over methods as much as results. Strange drifted further into mystical isolation. Beast questioned whether science itself betrayed him. Black Bolt watched alliances crumble like sand in wind. And while they fractured, the incursions continued, speeding like falling dominoes, each collapse a countdown to extinction. There was no enemy to punch, no monument to topple, no dictator to overthrow. There was only time, relentless, uncaring, marching towards zero. Heroes fail not when they fall, but when they lose belief in what they stand for. And in those secret rooms, belief was dying. They saved their world again and again and again. But each time they did, they killed a part of themselves until they wondered whether saving the universe was noble or monstrous. They were gods forced to decide which prayers to answer, and gods break when forced to choose. But still they fought, because surrender felt like betrayal of billions who never asked for this fight. They failed, but they refused to stop. And that stubbornness, that refusal to bow to inevitability, that fragile spark of humanity flickering in storm, that was the only thing keeping the universe alive. Yet even sparks burn out, and as the Illuminati stood on another collapsing world, light swallowing mountains and oceans like a cosmic tidal wave, One truth settled on them heavier than any weapon they ever forged. Heroes were never meant to carry the weight of infinity, and the longer they held it, the more it crushed them. The death of worlds continued not because villains triumphed, but because even gods can tire, and soon the tired break. Chapter 6: Doom's Revelation. Long before the final light of dying universes bled into the void, before Battleworld rose from the corpse of infinity, and Doom crowned himself God, there was a moment of quiet clarity in which one man saw what no one else could see, not because he possessed more compassion nor more brilliance than those around him, but because his soul, sharpened by pride and scarred by yearning, refused to accept a truth that Reed Richards, in his humility, feared to confront: that some evils are not born from malice but from design, that some catastrophes do not answer to heroism but to audacity. And so Victor von Doom, monarch of Latveria, scholar of science and sorcery, stood alone before the abyss and understood that the universe was not simply ending, it was being dismantled. Doom did not learn of the incursions through chance or prophecy. He traced the death of reality with obsessive finesse, dissecting cosmic echoes, reading doom in the pattern of collapsing universes the way priests read omens in spilled blood. While the Illuminati wrestled with morality beneath Wakanda, Doom worked in silence, his mask reflecting dying stars like funeral candles. He asked different questions, not how do we survive, but who decides we should perish? And in that divergence lay destiny, for Reed and the others fought symptoms. Doom hunted the cause. He traced mysteries across sectors of dead space where light itself refused to travel, examined cosmic cadavers where reality's bones still glowed with the echo of existence, and found clues etched into quantum silence. He sought answers from forbidden tomes, places where sorcerers trembled and warlocks dared not peer, and in the spaces between worlds he felt presence, not malevolence, but authorship. Doom sensed a hand writing the end of creation, patient, deliberate, unchallengeable. It was then he reached for the divine not to plead, but to demand, and found what no mortal should ever find: the Beyonders. They were not gods. Gods are worshipped. Gods can be feared. The Beyonders simply were, indifferent and absolute, their existence older than the concept of worship, preceding purpose, predating morality, standing outside causality like architects who, after building infinite worlds, now chose to dismantle them with the same ease one erases chalk from slate. Doom did not fall to knees, did not tremble, did not accept inevitability. Instead, he felt fury, the primal outrage of a man who never accepted limits, who believed destiny was not gift but conquest. He saw Reed Richards hiding behind equations, Stark behind machines, T'Challa behind honor, Strange behind mysticism, and damned them all for their hesitation. Doom knew that to face the Beyonders was not to fight, but to challenge the nature of existence. He turned to the only being in creation whose power could be bent like thread without breaking: Owen Reese, the Molecule Man, vessel and node of Beyonder power, the Sleeper, agent of cosmic termination. Molecule Man, fragile yet infinite, existed in every universe, a bomb placed by the Beyonders to detonate reality. Doom did not fear him. He understood him, and understanding is the sharpest blade in the universe. Doom lured him, not with deceit, but with shared purpose. For Molecule, man hated being weapon, hated being object, hated existing only to end. They became conspirators in defiance, two broken beings facing absolute gods. They murdered one Molecule Man after another across universes, extinguishing cosmic bombs before detonation. With each kill, Doom changed, absorbed power, tasted infinity, drank from well forbidden to mortals. But murder was not salvation, it was delay. The clock still wound downward. The Beyonders felt disturbance, and Doom, lowercase, moved like storm across creation. They confronted them, Doom and Molecule. Man stood before being who commanded the laws of all universes like threads in tapestry. What happened there cannot be spoken in mortal language. Clash without sound, war without movement, ideas colliding like black holes swallowing each other. Doom's armor peeled, his flesh burned, soul scraped, raw across eternity. He saw Reed's face reflected in cosmic annihilation, the eternal rival who built worlds while Doom conquered them. He saw Latveria burning, Mother's smile fading, throne tarnished, and all his pains echoed into nothing. Yet Doom endured, not because he was stronger, but because he refused not to. Molecule Man, broken, fragmented, screamed existence into shape. The Beyonders fell, not slain in triumph, but toppled by paradox, their power stolen through act unthinkable. Doom killed creation to save it, cut down the gardeners to protect the garden, even if flames already licked its edges. In the moment of ultimate collapse, when the final incursion loomed and universes collided like gods dying in each other's arms, Doom moved, not like hero, not like villain, but like inevitability given form. He seized the power of the Beyonders, absorbing authority older than infinity, holding raw creation in scarred hands. And in that instant, Doom understood the final truth. No universe could be saved, not even one. There was only rebuilding from ruins. He crafted not salvation, but Battleworld, mosaic of dying realities stitched together with desperate brilliance and ruthless control, a patchwork kingdom ruled by fear and worship. Doom did not pretend to be mortal. He crowned himself God Emperor not from arrogance but necessity. For the only thing scarier than Doom ruling creation was no one ruling creation. He sculpted laws, shaped continents, rewrote memory, plucked worlds from oblivion like bones from ashes, playing sculptor to a universe made of corpses. He reshaped humanity not as father, but as warden. Beauty through order, survival through obedience. He stole Reed's family, Sue and the children, not out of lust nor cruelty, but because their absence in New Canyon and his triumph would make it hollow. He needed to prove to himself that he was what he always claimed, the better Richards. He gave Strange a throne of faith to serve as sheriff, and Strange accepted, not out of loyalty to Doom, but because someone had to hold conscience in hand of God. They ruled together in uneasy symbiosis, Doom the divine, Strange the witness. And in quiet moments, Doom walked gardens he built, hearing children laugh with voices he preserved, and allowed himself a fantasy that perhaps he did not steal this role, but earned it. For what is a god but one who acts when others tremble? Yet beneath regality lay rot, a world held together by will and terror. He rewrote history, but memory is parasite, and truth survives in whispers. Reed's great ship survived death, holding souls who remembered reality before doom. They drifted, forgotten, held in time like seeds waiting for soil. When they awoke and stepped onto Battleworld, Doom felt them, rival like thorn in divine flesh. His perfection cracked. He felt fear, not of death, but of being proven unworthy. Doom believed he saved existence. Reed believed existence deserved better. And thus, the revelation was not that Doom became God, but that God was still a man made of wounds, longing, and infinite pride. Heroes failed, but Doom acted. To him, that was difference between savior and coward. Yet as Battleworld thrived beneath iron sky, as kingdoms bowed and memory bent, Doom could not silence one truth. He did not build paradise, he built monument to survival at cost of soul, and somewhere Reed Richards breathed, and that was Doom's greatest fear. For gods do not fear death, they fear replacement. Doom's revelation was not that the universe needed saving, it was that only he could save it, even if salvation looked like tyranny and fractured light. And so he stood, robe flowing, mask polished, power humming beneath skin like stars trapped in flesh, believing he had conquered fate. But fate, like Reed Richards, does not go quietly. And the greatest tragedy was not that Doom stole godhood. It was that, in a universe of infinite choices, Doom chose a world where only one man could be right, himself. The multiverse ended, but Doom endured, and endurance without humility becomes throne built on bones of possibility. The revelation was simple. Heroes try to save everyone. Doom saves what he values and destroys the rest. And now he valued existence itself, owned, reshaped, carved in his image. The question remaining was not whether Doom was right, but whether there existed a universe where he ever believed anyone else could be. Chapter 7: The God Who Was a Man. Godhood, when stripped of myth and all, is not light or thunder or choirs or judgment. It is the quiet weight of knowing that every breath in creation continues only because you will it too, that every sunrise and heartbeat and terror exists by your indulgence. And Victor Von Doom, once a boy who lost a mother to dark promises, once a man who believed fate insulted him by choosing another as its favorite, now stood as sovereign not of a nation or an idea, but of existence itself, and yet no crown forged by gods, nor forged from stolen divinity, could silence the echo that haunted him with every step across his impossible kingdom. You were once only a man. He wore the mantle of omnipotence with the solemnity of a ruler and the insecurity of a mortal, his metal mask now not a symbol of shame or armor, but a divine icon carved into the very fabric of reality. His green cloak, not cloth, but banner of the universe's last will. Battleworld stretched below him in fractured beauty, a mosaic of stolen realms, each a memory of a universe that no longer breathed. Deserts and cities, frozen wastelands and emerald forests, kingdoms ruled by barons who knelt when summoned and executed when insolent. To its inhabitants, Doom was not emperor, Doom was law. Children whispered prayers to him at night, their small hands clasped in shadow as though his gaze could pierce through walls to bless or condemn. Priests preached Doom's benevolence. Poets sang the hymn of his triumph. Statues rose in golden plazas where once ordinary markets sold fruit and bread, now temples of obedience where every eye bowed as Doom passed. And yet, beneath the surface calm, beneath worship sculpted from fear and awe, something simple and unyielding pulsed. Victor Von Doom wanted to believe that this world, this throne, this divinity, justified everything. He did not see himself as tyrant, but as shepherd of final reality, carrying existence on his shoulders like Atlas, except unlike myth, Doom had no chains upon him. He chose the burden, he claimed the necessity, he demanded reverence, not as hunger, but as proof that he was right. But godhood is lonely, and gods, once human, feel loneliness like blade. Doom walked among his creations as monarch and deity both, his steps echoing across marble halls, carved with his own image, and every bow, every whispered praise should have soothed him. Yet there was emptiness in praise compelled, a hollow ring in worship that arose not from love but survival. He could conjure beauty with a gesture, mountains with a breath, life with thought, yet he could not conjure peace in his own spirit. For godhood did not grant absence of doubt, only amplification of it. He had crafted a world where his triumph could not be questioned, where he sat at the center of existence like heart and chest, and yet his gaze still drifted toward the sky, to the place where universes once collided, as if expecting judgment from a cosmos he had already buried. In quiet moments he stood before Susan Storm, the woman he had taken not through seduction nor conquest, but through rewriting of truth, twisting memory until she believed Doom the man she loved, until her laughter echoed in halls where once she wept for Reed Richards. She raised their children. Not Reed's children, but children Doom claimed as his own by divine right, shaping identity like clay. Sue smiled at him with trust, genuine in ignorance, and Doom, for all his power, could not silence the fracture in his soul when her eyes glimmered with warmth meant for a man he could never be. He created a family to fill a void Reed left in him long before the multiverse collapsed. And victory tasted like ash because some thrones are pyres in disguise. Stephen Strange, his sheriff and unwilling witness, stood beside him in daily judgment. Yet even Strange, bound by unspoken pact and cosmic necessity, looked at Doom not with worship but with sorrow. Strange had seen gods before, but Doom, unlike them, still remembered what it was to bleed, to dream, to hunger, and thus felt failure like mortal does. And Strange knew that a god who fears being seen as weak is a god who will break worlds to avoid reflection. In council chambers, where banners of Doom hung like celestial commandments, Strange often watched Doom speak to barons and generals with calm authority, reminding them that order was gift and defiance sin, and Strange could not help but feel pity, for Doom spoke like man trying to convince heaven he belonged there. Yet, as sheriff, Strange enforced Doom's rule not because he believed Doom righteous, but because the alternative was collapse. And Strange feared anarchy more than he feared tyranny, for he had glimpsed what lay beyond creation. Nothing. Still, Strange prayed in secret, not to God, but for Doom's heart to crack just enough to let truth in, to recognize that power without humility becomes corruption, so vast it reshapes existence. Doom felt Strange's pity like insult, though Strange never voiced it. Gods do not need telepathy to feel doubt of others. Pride senses threats like wolf senses blood. He wandered gardens blooming from fragments of 100 realities, flowers that once fed alien suns, trees whose leaves hummed faint cosmic songs, water shimmering with stolen starlight. And he imagined a world where he was loved, not because he ruled, but because he deserved. Even in omnipotence, Doom dreamed, not of conquest, but of validation. He turned mountains into monuments, skies into canvases of emerald and violet storm clouds, oceans into mirrors reflecting his divinity. And yet, these miracles felt like declarations shouted at the empty sky. He could not silence the memory of Reed Richards' eyes, the calm certainty Reed always carried even in defeat. Doom had taken Reed's world, Reed's legacy, Reed's family, yet Reed's absence stung like insult, for Doom's triumph meant nothing if the one man he had always envied, always measured himself against, could not witness it. And when the ship survived, the raft carrying survivors of a universe that refused to bow, Reed among them, Doom felt something deeper than fear, exposure. Godhood was meant to end competition, but Reed Richards breathed still, and as long as Reed lived, Doom could not believe himself complete. He told himself Reed was threat, danger, anomaly, but truth was simpler. Doom needed Reed's recognition, not his defeat, and so Doom, master of reality, found himself still chasing validation he could not request without breaking the illusion of godhood. He stood atop his throne in Castle Doom, light cascading across steel and bone and sacred marble, and felt molecule man, hidden beneath Battleworld, starving in darkness, sustained only when Doom remembered him, like pulse beneath his feet, reminder that power was borrowed, not earned. Godhood did not bring freedom. It chained Doom to the source of his divinity, and he fed molecule man scraps not out of cruelty but fear. Fear that nourishing him fully might remind him of equality. Doom whispered gratitude to Owen Reese only in dreams, then woke denying it. For gods do not thank, gods are thanked. Yet Doom, in quietest corners of heart, knew he had not ascended by destiny but by theft, and gods born of theft fear justice. He looked upon Battleworld's borders, where the shield, a wall forged from the skeleton of a celestial, held back horrors from beyond, and he felt pride twisted with dread, for nothing scares a god like the knowledge that monsters exist even they cannot tame. He visited Baron Sinister's domain, where clones worshipped genetic vanity. He observed the white forest where Groot children whispered. He stood at the edge of Deadlands, where zombies gnawed eternity. He saw Thor Corp kneel, hammers hitting ground like thunderous prayer, and each bow soothed him less than the last. Worship without love is noise. Authority without trust is burden. Victory without witness is hollow. Doom built a flawless kingdom to prove himself flawless, and yet every realm, every worshipper, every threat, every prayer reminded him of fragility behind power. When he touched the mask on his face, metal forever fused to history. He remembered his mother's voice whispering that power comes not from spells, but from will. He remembered Reed's voice, steady, unshaken, whispering, "There is always another way." He remembered every humiliation, every rejection, every triumph stolen by cosmic irony, and now stood Emperor of Existence, yet still human enough to fear being seen as less. And herein lies tragedy of Doom. He became God to escape inadequacy, but godhood magnified it. He rescued existence not for glory alone, but because a universe Reed could not save was proved Doom should have always been chosen. And yet, when he stood above the world of his making and watched a child laugh, a bird fly, a river flowing from mountain sculpted by his will, Doom felt something almost gentle. Pride, not in himself, but in life, continuing. And then that softness turned to fear, for gods cannot afford softness. Battleworld was monument to salvation and ego both, a cathedral to survival and shrine to Doom's wounded heart. And every prayer, every bowed head, every breath of wind through obsidian halls reminded him of one truth that no omnipotence could erase. He was still victor, he was still man, and the hardest throne to hold is one built atop fear of falling. He ruled eternity, but his soul still looked for Reed Richards in dreams, hoping one day to hear the words that would free him. "You were right, Victor, but gods do not receive absolution. They seize it," and Doom's divinity, forged in defiance, trembled beneath weight of humanity refusing to die. The universe knelt, and yet Doom could not rest, for a god who remembers being a man is a god forever afraid. Chapter 8. The final hours of all existence. There are endings that feel sudden, violent, blazing across the sky like comets tearing reality apart. And there are endings that unfold with a sense of inevitability so suffocating that every second stretches into eternity. A slow motion collapse where even hope grows thin and brittle. The final hours of the multiverse were not loud, they were not heroic, they were not grand or triumphant. They were quiet, trembling, human, marked by the soft sounds of people trying and failing to pretend they were not witnessing the dying breath of creation. As the incursions accelerated, each one closer, faster, more merciless than the last, the Illuminati saw something worse than destruction. They saw acceptance creeping into the corners of minds once filled with defiance. saw shoulders sag beneath weight that no mortal nor god was ever meant to carry. Tony Stark looked out at burning galaxies on screens that once displayed armor schematics and energy readouts, his face illuminated not by sparks of invention, but by dying starlight. The man who built futures now staring at the end of all futures, whiskey untouched beside him, not because he had conquered the bottle, but because even oblivion lost meaning when oblivion ruled the cosmos. His fingers twitched for tools that could not help him, his voice quiet when he whispered into empty labs, not for answers, but apology. Reed Richards sat surrounded by chalkboards and holographic displays, littered with equations that no longer obeyed rule nor logic, his mind racing even as his heart cracked, hands trembling not from fear but exhaustion. The eternal optimist now faced proof that some things cannot be solved, some universes cannot be saved, some endings cannot be undone. He watched Franklin and Valeria sleep, tiny chests rising and falling with serene innocence, and for the first time in his life, Reed Richards envied ignorance, the purity of not knowing that everything, all of it, every dream and laugh and breath, was fading with the inevitability of a star cooling in ancient night. T'Challa, king of a nation and protector of a destiny older than empires, knelt on Wakandan soil one last time, pressing his palm into sacred earth as if to anchor himself in a world slipping from his grasp, whispering to past, to ancestors, to gods and spirits who once answered kings, and receiving only silence, not cruel, not dismissive, but final. Even divine ears turned away when eternity itself prepared to fall. Stephen Strange stared into mirrors that once reflected infinite mystical realms and now showed only one truth, that magic, like science, like royalty, like courage, could not halt the unraveling of existence. He placed his relics down, gently, reverently, as a surgeon might place tools after losing a patient, and wondered whether there was solace in knowing he had not failed. The universe had simply reached its logical conclusion, and he was but witness. Black Bolt walked through Attilan one last time, silent city bathed in quiet twilight, touching walls and balconies where voices once echoed, watching his people sleep beneath domes of crystal and moonlight. He did not wake them. A king lets his people dream when waking brings only sorrow. Beast, surrounded by abandoned instruments and silent monitors, buried his face in his hands, blue fur damp with tears he once swore he had no time for, mumbling theories into shaking palms not because he believed in solutions, but because thinking was all he had ever known, his final defiance, a whisper of intellect against cosmic silence. And Namor, proud Namor, king of seas, warrior of endless storms, stood upon an Atlantean balcony as the oceans trembled with coming collapse, not weeping, not raging, but breathing deeply as if tasting salt for the first time, refusing to bow, refusing to surrender dignity even when existence itself surrendered around him. If the universe would end, it would find him unbroken. Above them all, red skies crackled as universes converged, barriers between worlds shattering like glass under hammer, fragments of realities colliding, cities phasing through each other in cosmic madness. A skyscraper from one universe bisecting a mountain from another, the cries of beings who did not understand why their sky bled, and why the air itself seemed to reject them. Celestials fell, not in battle but like statues losing gravity, their titanic corpses drifting through space, symbols of power made irrelevant. Worlds tore like pages in wind-torn scripture. The ultimate universe hung overhead like mirror of doom, the two Earths approaching each other in inevitability written long before either planet gave birth to thought. On one side, heroes of Earth 616 gathered, desperate but resolute. On the other, heroes of Earth 1610, the ultimate universe, prepared for war, believing they were under attack rather than witnessing universal suicide. Captain America of one world stared at face of another, two symbols of hope preparing to kill to save what remained, two shields reflecting two dying skies. Thor raised hammer, lightning useless against fate. Hulk roared not in rage but agony. Cyclops' visor glowed like dying sun. Spider-Man stood trembling beneath mask, feeling with every heartbeat that childhood dreams do not matter when gods bleed. Miles Morales watched both worlds crack, innocence fracturing the sky, a child at the end of forever, as armies gathered, as weapons charged, as final breaths drew near. Reed Richards reached across space and time, sending final message not of strategy, but reconciliation to Tony Stark, the friend he had fought beside and against, the rival who understood impossible pressure, the brother he never acknowledged as such. We tried. Tony replied not with bravado but with truth. We failed, but we tried. It was not surrender, it was acceptance. And then war began not as battle of values, but as reflex, instinct, of beings refusing to die still, beams firing, hammers crashing, shields shattering as Earth met Earth, heroes clashing not as enemies but as ghosts fighting to deny inevitability. Reed and T'Challa raced against collapsing physics to launch their life raft, a vessel of hope carved not from metal but desperation, designed not to save a universe but to preserve seeds from it. On the other side, the Maker, twisted Reed of ultimate reality, brilliance corrupted into cold cruelty, prepared his own salvation, a dark mirror mocking Reed's faith with perverse logic. The universes screamed, boundaries ruptured, cities tore free from gravity and floated like dying thoughts in void. And then the sound, not explosion, not roar. A soft, dull note, as if someone placed hand over mouth of dying God. Matter collapsed, space inverted, time folded, and everything ended. Families held each other as skies split. Lovers kissed, children clutched parents, strangers prayed to gods who no longer existed. Heroes fought not to win but to keep fighting until they could not. No speech, no trumpet, no grand revelation. Only light, only silence, only an ending too vast to feel small within. And then nothing. No stars, no worlds, no sound, only void. No more multiverse, no more infinity, no more chance. Yet in the void, where nothing should exist, where reality was corpse and time lay still like frozen breath, small lights glimmered, life rafts holding fragments of souls who refused to yield to entropy, capsules floating in infinite absence. Reed's raft held the last hope of the universe, flaring like ember in eternal night. The Maker's vessel floated too, twisted salvation mirroring noble one. They drifted in timeless ruin, last survivors in womb of nothingness, humanity and monstrosity, both preserved by stubborn refusal to accept finality. And Doom, watching from stolen throne of Beyonders' corpses, reached out, seizing opportunity not to save universe, but to craft new one, a world shaped not by chance but by his will. For only two things remained after creation died, memory and ambition. Reed carried one, Doom carried the other. And when existence breathed again, when stars would rise once more under false sky, only one truth would echo. The universe ended not in scream, but in whisper. And the only ones who heard it were those determined to rebuild, not because they deserved to, but because they could. The final hours of all existence were not heroic, not glorious, not legendary. They were quiet, human, full of fear, regret, desperate love. And when eternity died, those who survived did so carrying weight heavier than universes. The knowledge that sometimes trying is not enough, and even the greatest among us can fail. But failure is not end, because in void, in silence where even gods felt quiet, one spark remained, not hope, but defiance. And defiance, stubborn and fragile, would ignite creation once more. Chapter 9. The White Void. After the multiverse died, after the last colliding Earths folded into silence and the scream of reality flattened into nothingness, there was no roar, no aftershock, no divine choir or cosmic pulse, only absence, a purity of stillness so complete that even concepts like time and motion felt like memories rather than truths. Existence did not shatter like glass, it simply ceased, leaving behind a blankness that was not darkness, not light, not space, not dream, but a white void, endless, indifferent, a canvas wiped clean of story and sound and shape, waiting for nothing, promising nothing, holding nothing, to beings who once commanded galaxies and bent magic and law. This blankness was not peaceful, it was suffocating, the absolute negation of purpose, a silence so perfect it became agony. There were no stars to witness it, no watchers to record it, no cosmic entities to debate fate or judge failure. Eternity had died, infinity had collapsed, the living tribunal lay slain by beyond their hands, long before the final collapse, and even death herself stood meaningless when there was no life left to define her. In this pale nowhere, thoughts echoed into void as though bouncing off nothing, dissolving without resonance. It was not punishment, it was not mercy, it was the simple consequence of unmaking. Yet something persisted, not because it was meant to, but because will can sometimes flicker even after the candle of creation is snuffed. Floating within the blank eternity was a vessel, a lifeboat forged in desperation and brilliance and hope, holding the last fragments of a universe that refused to surrender fully to oblivion. Reed Richards had not saved the world, he had saved possibility, encased in a ship designed not to travel through space but to withstand the collapse of meaning. Inside, Reed drifted in suspended stasis among those chosen, not by arrogance but necessity, key figures, heroes, family, seeds of something that might someday grow where nothing existed. His body floated weightless, but his mind, even in suspended pause, quivered beneath the burden of responsibility. He had tried to save universes, and in the end, he had saved only a sliver, a bubble of thought inside dead infinity. Time did not pass in the void, for there was no time to move, but consciousness can ache even without seconds to count. Reed did not dream, for dreams need reality to anchor them, yet somewhere beyond suspension, he felt loss, not sharp, but deep, like ache embedded into the absence itself. The white void carried no wind, yet if Reed's chest could have risen, it would have trembled with the weight of knowing. The mission had not been to save all, only to save something, and in that fragment of survival, guilt swirled, a silent echo that did not fade because silence has no mercy. Elsewhere, another raft floated, the Maker's twisted arc from the ultimate universe, containing not hope but cunning, not salvation but ambition, wearing disguise of survival. Where Reed dreamed of rebuilding, the Maker dreamed of rewriting. To him, the void was not tragedy but opportunity, blank page for new empire, escape from judgment, freedom from consequence. He did not mourn worlds, he saw only that which had been cleared for his invention. And while the hero slept on Reed's raft, and the Maker plotted on his, there was one who did not float, nor sleep, nor dream, Victor von Doom, who remained awake in the heart of nothing, because he had taken the power of the Beyonders and fused it to purpose. Doom did not drift. He stood at the edge of oblivion, mantle swirling though there was no wind, mask gleaming though there was no light. He was not bound by the void. He was not part of it. He stood against it, holding creation not in his hands but in his will. To Doom, the absence of reality was not void. It was throne room, and he was its solitary monarch. Alone in eternity, he watched what had been, and what could be, and what must never be again. He did not fear silence, silence feared him. For in that whiteness, Doom made a decision, not spoken aloud, not carved into stone, but forged in conviction that had defined his existence from childhood. If the universe would be reborn, it would be in his image. Reed Richards had failed. The Illuminati had faltered. Gods had fallen. Only Doom had dared to challenge fate, and won. And so, in the white void, Doom lifted his hand and created. It began not with sound or light, but with decision. The kind of decision that reshapes eternity. Fragments of universes, scraps of realities torn from death not by chance but by Doom's divine theft, coalesced under his command. Pieces of worlds, pieces of skies, floating memories of cities and deserts and seas, and Doom stitched them together like scars across the face of infinity, forming patchwork reality not born of harmony but command. This was not multiverse, it was Battleworld, a single world forged from graves, a monument to survival twisted through ego, a sanctuary for existence only because Doom demanded existence not end with silence. As land formed from void, as mountains rose and oceans filled and sun burned artificial dawn across impossible horizon, Doom was not triumphant, he was resolute, sculptor of necessity, tyrant of rebirth. Yet even as he forged world from nothing, even as he crowned himself savior, his power came not purely from within, but from below, where molecule man sat hungry in dark abyss. Power siphoned from him like marrow from bone, sustaining Doom's divinity. Doom called it balance, molecule man called it bondage, but in the void, justice and injustice lost meaning, replaced only by function, and function demanded Doom rule and molecule man fuel him. As Battleworld took shape, as peoples and kingdoms drawn from deceased universes found themselves alive without understanding why, as barons knelt and Thor marched beneath storming sky that had no storm, Reed's raft continued drifting, unseen by God who had no intention of sharing sovereignty. Reed slept unaware of Doom's triumph, unaware that Sue and Franklin and Valeria lived under Victor's rule, unaware that the man he always opposed now ruled reality in his stead. There was no clock in the void, but eventually, whether moments or millennia passed cannot be known. Reed's raft brushed against boundary between absence and creation, and its occupant stirred, not to life but to existence, like seeds cracking in soil. Their arrival wasn't heralded, it was anomaly in perfect dominion, flaw in Doom's design. For where there is survival, there is consequence. Where there is memory, there is comparison. And where Reed Richards breathes, Doom cannot claim absolute truth. Yet before confrontation, before rebellion, before revelation, there was silence, one last breath between death of all and birth of one. In that breath, the white void waited, no longer infinite but thinning, retreating as Battleworld expanded like fire devouring snow. The void did not lose, it simply stepped back, as if amused by Doom's defiance, as if knowing that creation and destruction are dance eternal, and this was merely another step. The white void was not enemy, it was witness, and in that witness the story of gods and mortals continued. For even when everything ends, something remains, stubborn, fragile, unreasonable, human. The white void did not judge Reed for surviving, nor Doom for building, nor Maker for scheming. It held them all with the same cold impartiality, waiting for next collapse, next rise, next breath. Eternity is not straight line. It breathes, expands, contracts, forgets, remembers. And in one brief inhalation after infinite exhale, Reed Richards slept in cradle of absence, Doom stood in palace of stolen creation, and the void whispered a truth that existence always forgets until it must learn again. Nothingness is patient. Worlds roar, gods rise, universes burn, but nothing waits, always hungry, always ready, always certain, and only one force in all reality ever resists nothing forever. Not power, not knowledge, not divinity, but refusal. Refusal to vanish, refusal to surrender meaning, refusal to let silence be final word. The white void vanished not defeated, but simply stepping aside as life strained once more to defy the inevitable. In silence before rebirth, the last truth hung unspoken in infinite air. Endings are not absolute, they are invitations. And the universe, even in death, whispered again. Chapter 10. Battleworld, a world made by doom. Battleworld wasn't born like other worlds, not from cosmic dust swirling in starlit cradles, not from divine hands shaping matter, not from evolutionary chaos carving life out of accident. It emerged as decree, a world spoken into being by will, made God, forged from ruins of infinite dead universes and stitched together like memory fragments into a single impossible continent, suspended beneath artificial heavens and bordered by a void that remembered all and forgave nothing. Doom did not rebuild the universe, he curated it, constructing a reality not guided by nature but architecture of pride and control. Where Earth once spun alone in vast galaxy, Battleworld was a mosaic of broken worlds fused into one, each region a tombstone to the multiverse, each border a scar where realities once diverged, each people living not because fate chose them, but because doom allowed their breath to fill the air. There were deserts that once belonged to far future Earths, scorched by Ultron domination, regions of white stone haunted by howling survivors of dead Asgards, and jungles where dinosaurs still roamed beneath alien skies, stolen from forgotten timelines. There was the Kingdom of Manhattan, where two versions of New York, one from Earth 616, another from Ultimate Reality, coexisted not in harmony but tension, ghost echoes of worlds forced to overlap without consent, skyscrapers rising in hybrid skyline like fractured memories trying to coexist. There was Bar Sinister, realm of Mr. Sinister, where clones whispered compliments to their master in velvet corridors dripping with ego and intrigue. The Shield stretched across southern expanse, wall forged from the bones of a dead celestial, holding at bay the Deadlands, a grotesque wasteland crawling with decaying Marvel zombies, hungry for flesh and freedom. Beneath those infected plains lay Ultron territory, where metal monstrosities from alternate futures tore at each other in endless war, swarming like locusts of extinction. There was also Doomguard, realm of the Thor core, an army of Thors drawn from countless universes, not princes nor gods but enforcers, divine police sworn solely to doom. They patrolled sky and soil alike, hammers crackling with obedience, lightning summoned not for justice but order. And in the center, high upon a mountain, crowned by obsidian stone and shimmering banners, stood Castle Doom, citadel of the God Emperor, a fortress of ivory and iron whose halls echoed with silence, heavy as gravity, walls adorned with statues of Doom, not as man, not as monarch, but as myth. Gardens bloomed under artificial light, roses humming with cosmic residue, rivers running clear through courtyards lined with thrones carved from broken universes. Citizens bowed when doom passed, whispering prayers beneath breath, believing survival itself proof of his divinity. Some worship from awe, others from fear, but all worship. For on Battleworld, faith was not choice. It was currency, survival's last law. Doctor Doom did not rule alone, though power he held absolute. At his side stood Stephen Strange, Sheriff of Agamotto, draped in white robes, Book of the Vishanti at his hip, serving not as servant nor equal, but conscience chained by necessity. Strange enforced Doom's word, not because he believed in Doom's righteousness, but because collapse of order would bring madness worse than tyranny. Strange walked Battleworld's edges, wandering through kingdoms where lives continued like fragmented dreams, peasants tending fields unaware they lived in patchwork ghostland, warriors dueling atop floating castles carved from remnants of shattered galaxies, mystics whispering spells that functioned only because Doom permitted physics to bend for them. He saw families laugh beneath cerulean sun, children chase holographic butterflies, lovers walk through gardens sculpted by borrowed god power, and wondered if a lie that preserved life could be truth deeper than honesty. But then Strange saw those forgot, those doomed to suffer, those cast into deadlands, those executed for dissent, those erased from memory because they challenged perfection. And he remembered Doom's world was not miracle, but dictatorship executed by omniscience. Sue Storm lived here too, unaware she had ever loved another, unaware her life before Battleworld existed. She smiled when Doom entered chamber, warmth in eyes shaped by false memory, gratitude in voice for a paradise that was prison gilded by divinity. Franklin played with stars he created in garden, while Valeria constructed devices under Doom's proud gaze, brilliance flowing through veins inherited not by genetics, but by narrative Doom forced upon them. Doom loved them in his own twisted, yearning way, not because they were his, but because he wished they had been. Love stolen does not feel like theft when the thief believes destiny owed it. And Doom believed destiny his servant, not judge. In courts beneath castle's shadow, barons argued over territory, each one ruler of fragment carved from cosmic ruin. Apocalypse in barren lands waging eternal war of Darwinian ideology. Maestro ruling domain where broken hulks smashed cities into dust. Hyperion presiding over utopian kingdom built on absolute force. They bowed to Doom not because he commanded respect, but because he commanded reality, their loyalty bound by survival instinct sharper than any blade. His will was climate of Battleworld, his displeasure, natural disaster, his decree, law of physics. Yet, for all splendor and fear and ritual and worship, cracks existed, not in walls, but truth. Some remembered. Rachel Summers sensed memories like embers beneath ash. Future Foundation. Children whispered theories in secret corridors. Valeria asked questions too sharp for her false reality to hold. Thor's doubted in private quiet. And somewhere beneath world's stitched crust, the life raft holding Reed, Richards, and others remained undetected, like bullet in heart waiting to move. Meanwhile, Baron Stephen Strange, who once knelt in humility before cosmic mystery, now knelt in false chapel beneath stained glass depicting Doom as savior, and wondered why a god needed worship. Strange saw Doom's exhaustion behind mask, saw tiny tremor in omnipotent hand, saw glimmer of loneliness in Emperor who reshaped morality into a mirror of his wounds. And Strange knew Battleworld was not eternal. It was holding pattern for grief, pride and fear wearing crown of creation. Citizens believed Doom defeated the Beyonders alone. Truth lay in cavern hidden beneath Castle Doom, where Molecule Man sat hollow-eyed, spine curled like wilted tree, feeding Doom's godhood through tether of stolen cosmic power, starving unless Doom fed him scraps of sustenance, bread, energy, attention. Doom visited him not as friend nor enemy, but prisoner of necessity. "Do you hate me?" Doom once asked. Molecule Man answered with truth that no mask could recoil from. "I resent you." Doom neither punished nor comforted. He simply nodded, knuckles whitening under glove, for gods do not ask forgiveness, and men do not always know how to accept gratitude born of coercion. Battleworld breathed at Doom's command. Storms stilled when he wished, stars burned when he desired. Life continued because he refused to let nothing win. And yet, in every quiet moment when night fell across patchwork earth and only whispering wind brushed spires of Castle Doom, Victor Von Doom removed his mask in solitude and looked into mirror that reflected both God and broken child, and wondered whether omnipotence was victory or curse. And still he convinced himself again and again, as kings do in solitary hours, that he did what others could not, that he alone saved existence, that this was not vanity but necessity, that power justified itself when no higher law stood above it. But deep beneath, in shaping a world where he could never be challenged, Doom created a universe where he could never be comforted, for fear and awe are called companions. Battleworld was miracle made from arrogance, salvation built from ruins, lie constructed to keep sorrow from crushing God's heart. It was triumph and tragedy, sanctuary and prison, testament to humanity's refusal to vanish, and warning of what happens when one man decides failure cannot belong to him. It was beautiful, it was horrifying, it was necessary, it was impossible, and like all impossible things, it trembled the moment truth stirred, because somewhere far from throne room, in silence so deep even gods did not hear it, a vessel creaked, stasis cracked, a man opened his eyes, and hope, fragile, gentle, disobedient, woke. Reed Richards had returned, and the god who was a man felt a shiver across reality, as if universe inhaled before confrontation it had always been destined to witness. Chapter 11. The Sheriff and the Saint. In a world where God wore iron and spoke with the voice of inevitability, there stood beside him a man who was neither servant nor equal but something far stranger, a witness, a conscience tethered to divinity like a candle tied to a hurricane, flickering but unextinguished. Stephen Strange, once sorcerer supreme, once healer of body and mind, now sheriff of Battleworld, custodian of Doom's order and quiet judge of his soul. Strange walked the patchwork roads of that impossible realm, not like a knight nor like a herald, but like a monk carrying sorrow, his cloak trading crimson for white, symbol of penance rather than authority, humility rather than control. He enforced Doom's law not through violence, for violence was tool of Thors and barons, but through presence, that serene gravity that comes only to those who have seen truth so vast they strip away pride and leave behind only burden. If Doom was architect of Battleworld, Strange was its caretaker, tending a fragile garden grown from cosmic ash. He visited fields where men harvested grains beneath a false sun, and nodded with tired kindness. He passed temples where psalms praised Doom as savior, and though he bowed his head in respect, his eyes carried ache of a priest who knows his God is both real and flawed. In the court of Castle Doom, Strange stood on polished marble beneath stained glass depicting Victor in divine triumph. Arms raised, cosmic energy swirling, universes kneeling, and listened to lords and tyrants swear loyalty, speaking oaths that tasted more of fear than faith. Doom sat upon throne forged from fragments of dead realities, every angle sharp, every edge symbolic of impossible judgment. Strange stood at his right hand, not restrained by chain nor spell, but by the knowledge that if he abandoned this post, if he abdicated this impossible duty, chaos would pour through Battleworld like flood through broken gates. Strange did not believe Doom spotless. He believed Doom inevitable, and someone must stand between tyranny and dissolution. Every day, Strange bore witness to Doom's choices, granting mercy to loyal peasants, delivering crushing wrath upon dissenters, shaping laws as sculptor shapes marble, authority absolute, yet twitching with insecurity beneath god metal armor. Doom asked Strange for counsel, not in doubt but ritual, for asking implies humility, and Doom tolerated humility only when performed as demonstration of control. Tell me, Stephen, Doom would say in voice smooth as obsidian, have I been just? And Strange, who knew the price of honesty, answered neither with flattery nor condemnation, but with truth sharpened by compassion. You have preserved life. For that was Doom's righteousness, not kindness, but preservation. Strange did not lie. He simply withheld judgment, because judgment belonged not to him but to the shape of fate unrolling beyond sight. Yet Strange's counsel carried weight, and Doom, God yet still man, clung to that weight like anchor in storm. For Strange's approval soothed something raw beneath metal, something lonely. There were moments, rare as comets across eternal sky, when Doom allowed vulnerability to bleed through divine veneer, when he walked with Strange in secret gardens hidden inside Castle Doom's heart, where flowers from infinite world bloomed without memory, and artificial starlight shimmered above like stolen heaven. They did not speak as deity and vassal, but as two men who had known failure intimately and carried it like scar beneath pride. Doom would pluck a flower and hold it as though it were proof he deserved power, whispering not boast but confession. I saved them, Stephen. I saved all that could be saved. Strange would nod, not with agreement but empathy, because he had seen Doom kill Beyonders, steal godhood, forge existence from ruin, not as tyrant seeking glory, but as man refusing loss. Yet Strange also knew this truth. Salvation seized without humility becomes prison. Strange prayed Doom might learn this. Doom prayed Strange would never abandon his side. In those gardens, Strange saw Victor von Doom, not God Emperor, and understood tragedy. Doom did not crave worship. He craved absolution. But absolution demands confession, and confession demands vulnerability, and vulnerability is terror to man who lifted universe alone. So Doom instead built monuments, enforced hymns, shaped reality to prove worth. Strange watched, torn between awe and grief, a witness trapped between reverence and dread. Where others saw deity, Strange saw father grieving for world he could not fully claim, hero afraid to be revealed, fraud, child hiding scar behind mask polished like pride. Yet Strange knew balance had limits. As portals occasionally flickered at the edges of Battleworld, as anomalies like ghosts of forgotten realities brushed against fabric of Doom's dominion, Strange felt tremor not of rebellion, but truth insisting itself. And when the life rafts appeared, when the survivors of Earth 6116 and the Ultimate Universe crashed into Battleworld and emerged like mistakes in divine architecture, Strange felt air change. He was the one who found them in barren wastes, bodies bruised yet breathing, eyes opening to impossible horizon, souls tethered to universes gone. Reed Richards, his family absent, standing among other refugees. Black Panther, Star-Lord, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Spider-Man, each shocked not by survival but by absence of everything once known. Strange looked at Reed, and grief flickered like lightning behind calm. Here was the one Doom did not want found. Here was the proof that godhood was not absolute, that past had not been erased. Strange gathered them, protected them from Thors who would enforce divine order, hid them in catacomb halls beneath fortress of creation, and faced decision that would cost him eternity. Tell Doom, maintain fragile peace, or hide hope and risk divine wrath. When Doom sensed disturbance, for gods do not require eyes to see betrayal, he summoned Strange, voice calm as winter steel. Show me who has returned. Strange hesitated. A second, no more. But hesitation is treason when God watches. Doom's gaze sharpened, suspicion turning divine warmth into icy decree. Strange knew what Doom feared. Reed Richards alive meant judgment, reflection. Doom demanded proof. Strange refused. And in that refusal lay his sainthood. Doom, betrayed, did not roar. Gods do not lower themselves to rage. He looked at his friend, his witness, his anchor, and spoke soft word heavier than thunder. Why? Strange's voice trembled not with fear but love, shaped by duty, because there must be someone who remembers what came before. And for first time since ascension, Doom felt wound open, not anger but heartbreak, because Strange's refusal said what no prayer or praise ever would. Your world, Victor, is not truth. Rage flickered behind Doom's mask, not flame but cold star imploding. He lifted hand, power raw enough to erode mountains with thought. But Strange did not step back. His final act was not defiance but mercy, casting survivors away in flash of light, scattering them across Battleworld so fate could move where power failed. Thor's corpse surged. Divine law demanded punishment. Doom raised gauntleted hand, not as God smiting mortal, but man silencing friend who saw too much. Light cracked, marble. Strange fell, not screaming, simply exhaling, as if relieved burden ended, and with that Sheriff died. Not by sword, but heartbreak. Doom stood over Strange's body, still a statue, and the world paused. Not storm, not tremor, not roar, just silence heavy enough to break sky. God mourned, but gods mourn in solitude. In death, Strange became saint, not canonized by worship, but by truth. He alone held line between power and purpose. His sacrifice was gift not to rebels, nor doom, nor universe, but to memory. Memory that even in world sculpted by omnipotence, conscience can still act. Doom whispered Strange's name, soft, private, and for a moment armor shimmered like tear formed behind steel. But grief is weakness in world built by ego. So Doom hardened, issued decree, sent Thors to hunt Reed and others, buried sorrow beneath command, yet Battleworld felt tremor, not quake, but shift in fate's posture. Because when Sheriff fell, Judge awoke, and Doom, in chambers once shared with friend, sat alone on throne suddenly colder, heavier, emptier. Power without witness is torment, divinity without trust is cage. Doom was still God, but Sheriff was gone, and in distant lands Reed Richards breathed, and universe, small and fragile and stolen though it was, sensed inevitable confrontation. A god cannot endure long when saint shows God's reflection. Strange died to give truth a chance. Now truth would walk Battleworld's roads, and Doom would follow as both ruler and man afraid to be seen. A saint had fallen, a reckoning had begun. Chapter 12. A glitch in godhood. When a god builds a world, he expects obedience, worship, smooth and perfect order. But creation, even when sculpted by stolen divinity and held together by fear and awe, resists perfection because existence by its nature seeks truth the way roots seek water beneath stone. And so, after Strange fell and was carried from life not by blade but by loyalty and sorrow, Battleworld began to shift not with violence but with whispers, small cracks in a divine mirror, tiny fractures spreading through the architecture of Doom's rule, not in marble or sky but in memory, doubt and identity. The first signs were not grand rebellions nor thunderous proclamations. They were quiet. A Thor questioning why prayers felt heavy instead of holy. A farmer waking from dream of a world with two suns and skies that were never controlled by Doom's hand. A child staring at statue of the god emperor and feeling not comfort but confusion, unable to explain why worship tasted like fear. Imperfection seeped into paradise like water through hairline fracture, unnoticed at first by those who believe perfection virtue, but sensed deeply by those who held truth as instinct. Valeria Richards, brilliant, curious, sharp as glass, stood in Doom's library, surrounded by infinite knowledge curated by God's decree, her fingers tracing spines of books she had memorized, her eyes narrowing not in boredom but suspicion. She asked Doom questions no child should ask a deity, questions only genius born of Richard's blood could conceive. If you saved everything, she wondered aloud, why are there places we cannot go? Why are there memories that make people cry and they don't know why? Doom answered with warmth painted thin over irritation, because some places are dangerous, some memories painful. But Valeria saw something else, the hesitation, a hairline crack in God's voice, enough to plant doubt deeper than any rebel insurgency could. Children sense truth before adults dare to name it. Elsewhere, across Battleworld's fractured map, pockets of resistance did not rise but awakened, quiet minds sparked by faint remembrance, instincts stirring like echoes of old worlds longing not for justice but recognition. Mr. Fantastic Science Reed Richards was alive, scattered with others across this divine patchwork, emerging like ghosts from cosmic grief. They hid not out of fear of doom, though fear was there, but because they understood that to reveal themselves prematurely would doom not just them but any chance of truth breathing in this false creation. T'Challa walked deserts beneath stars that were too perfect and knew they were crafted, not born. Namor watched oceans crash against shores where currents felt wrong, as if obeying sculptor more than tide. Peter Parker wandered through fragment Manhattan and felt homesickness not for city before him, but city that once breathed freedom instead of reverence. Even those who did not, yet remember fully felt unease like stone and shoe. A god may erase memory, but he cannot erase longing, and Doom felt it. At first faint, like eye twitching, like pulse skipping, like chill across steel spine. He sensed ripple in fabric he wove, sensed ghost of Richard's waking, sensed Strange's absence like phantom limb, aching where certainty once lay. Doom stood in throne room carved from judgment, gazing into mirrors that showed him not reflection but dominion. Yet one reflection trembled, faint like breath fogging glass, showing not Doom triumphant but Doom question, and doubt to a god forged not from faith but insecurity is poison. He tightened control, sent Thors to patrol edges of world map where anomalies flickered, questioned barons in courts lit by dying starlight, silenced whispers with divine decree. But whispers are not extinguished by command. They grow quieter, but they persist, waiting for a moment to bloom into roar. Doom walked among his subjects disguised as mortal, as he sometimes did, to reassure himself of loyalty, hearing praise spill from lips like liturgy. Glory to God Doom. He saved us all. He is mercy. He is law. He is all. And yet, once, just once, he heard something else. If he is God, why do we fear so much? A woman whispered it to her sister in a marketplace, hand trembling around bread. Doom froze. Not because she had power, but because she had truth. Meanwhile, across strange lands twisted by Doom's will, anomalies multiplied. Cyclops, powered by Phoenix Force from the raft, confronted Thor's at shield and declared there must be judgment for a false god. But battle, though fierce, was not revolution. It was spark. One ember flaring and then smothered. Star-Lord wandered into strange domain, ruled by Maestro and escaped by instinct, by wit, by luck, pieces moving on board Doom believed he controlled. Black Panther found sigil of Wakandan panthers scratched into barren stone by instinct deeper than memory, and wept, not for loss but recognition. And in one hidden cavern beneath Castle Doom, where Molecule Man fed Doom's omnipotence in starved resentment, a new presence arrived. Reed Richards, not through Doom's allowance, but through inevitability. He found Owen Reese not by searching, but by being drawn, the way truth pulls those who seek it. Molecule Man looked at Reed with eyes hollow and hungry and whispered, "You're late." Reed knelt beside him, touched ground that hummed with raw existence, and said simply, "I am here." And in that moment, two truths faced each other. Doom's world was built, Reed's truth was waking. Molecule Man smiled, weak, excited, terrified. "You know," he whispered, "this is all wrong." Reed nodded, not with arrogance, with sorrow, for he saw not Doom's tyranny, but Doom's suffering. Too much power, too much fear, too alone. Meanwhile, Doom grew restless. He summoned Susan, seeking reassurance not from lover, but mirror. He looked into her eyes, expecting devotion, and found softness without worship, warmth without awe, love that felt real, but was borrowed from life that had never existed. Doom asked, "Do you doubt me?" Sue answered gently, "I do not doubt what you have done." But Doom heard only what was not spoken. She did not say she did not doubt who he was. Doom's breath faltered behind mask. Godhood trembled, not from threat but from longing unreturned. Even Franklin's stars, conjured in play, flickered slightly, cosmic resonance catching scent of truth. Children know when illusions breathe wrong. And then it came, the first moment Doom saw Reed, across desert where sky cracked like shell, where sands shimmered with memory fragments. Doom appeared, cloak, whipping in wind that existed only because his will allowed it. And Reed stood there, upright, calm, eyes soft, not with fear but recognition. Doom asked no question. Reed offered no accusation. They looked not like enemies but like inevitabilities. Doom said quietly, voice low, "You survived." Reed answered, "You built something beautiful." Doom's breath hitched. Compliment from Richards meant more than worship from World. "But then," Reed continued gently, "but it isn't real." And Doom, God King of all, flinched, tiny, but enough to shift sky. Rage did not come, instead, grief. "It is better than what came before," Doom argued, voice faltering. Reed did not disagree. "Terrible kindness. It is not yours to decide alone." Doom's mask stiffened, sadness turning to fury's shadow. "I saved everything." "You saved what you could control." Silence, heavy, eternal. And in that pause, World held breath. Doom vanished not in defeat but withdrawal. God's retreat not when beaten, but when doubt wounds deeper than blade. He returned to throne room and sat, metal palm pressed to mask posture not regal but human. And Battleworld felt tremor. Subtle, but first tremor always small. Storms begin as whisper. The glitch in godhood was not rebellion, not revelation, not battle. It was recognition. Reed lived. Strange died for truth. Children remembered. People whispered. Molecule Man laughed in darkness. And Doom, for first time since becoming God, felt fear. Not of losing world, but of being seen. Chapter 13. Rising against a God. Revolutions rarely begin with war. They begin with remembering, with a breath held too long, with the quiet realization that truth has a pulse strong enough to challenge divinity. And on Battleworld, that pulse began in whispers and walked its way into the open, not as army, but as inevitability. As Reed Richards gathered the fractured survivors of dying realities not to wage battle, but to reclaim meaning itself, moving across Doom's world like patient wind eroding mountain of arrogance. He did not rally banners nor shout speeches. Reed simply appeared, calm and steady, offering memory like lantern in darkness, reminding heroes who they were before Doom rewrote their names into footnotes beneath his throne. Black Panther, proud king whose heart carried weight of entire nation now lost, felt fire rekindle behind eyes dulled by cosmic grief, and he stood not as fugitive but as monarch, remembering crown that no god's will could unmake. Namor, ever sovereign and storm incarnate, joined not for righteousness, but because pride could not accept borrowed reality shaped by rivals' insecurity. To bend knee to mortal called God was humiliation. Ocean Prince refused to taste. Spider-Man, wide-eyed yet unbroken, carried guilt and hope in equal measure, heart aching for world gone yet beating for chance to build anew. And Miles Morales beside him, youth forged in tragedy of ultimate universe, still believing heroism was not the act of saving world, but refusing to surrender soul. Star-Lord, jaded and reckless, found himself laughing in disbelief at cosmic absurdity. We survived the end of everything, he muttered. Guess we might as well finish the fight. Thanos, Titan born to worship death, but now facing existence molded by mortal hubris, did not kneel. He saw Doom not as deity, but trespasser on cosmic law, and he followed Reed not out of loyalty, but because only confrontation between truth and power could satisfy inevitability of eternal philosophy. But rebellion was not chorus. It was discordant symphony where motives clashed but marched toward the same conclusion. Doom's world was miracle built on stolen breath, and breath once stolen always returns. As Reed moved through domains, memory followed him like wake behind ship. Citizens feeling ghosts of lives never lived here. Brief flickers of grief and longing and recognition. A mother holding child suddenly remembering another name. A warrior seeing enemy and recalling they once fought side by side. A priest in cathedral feeling prayer turned sour on tongue because altar held false god, not savior. Thor core, once sacred protectors of order, felt doubts hard as hammers. One Thor, brave enough to feel truth instead of worship, looked at sky and saw not heaven but cage, at Doom and saw not father but architect of lie. She cast hammer upward like challenge to cosmos and spoke, vow, I serve justice, not fear dressed in glory. Lightning answered her, not as Doom's command, but as thunder of awakening, and as she rose, others followed, some hesitant, others fierce, all shaken by strangest sacrifice, echoing across storm-forged memory. You cannot force devotion when truth breathes. The God Emperor's police found themselves questioning law they swore to enforce, and doubt spread like storm front. Meanwhile, Doom watched from throne high enough to see everything yet too high to feel anything clearly. He saw movements in lands, warriors gathering, murmurs of rebellion, but rebellion did not frighten him. Rebellion insulted him. To Doom, resistance was not threat but ungratefulness. Proof mortals did not understand gift he had given. Life beyond death, world beyond collapse. They rise, Doom murmured to empty hall, because they do not know what waits beyond me. It was not anger, it was sorrow turned inward into arrogance. Doom believed himself shield against annihilation. And in truth, he had been. But power achieved to prevent death does not excuse strangling life. In chambers where Susan waited, he confessed frustration, like weary husband, rather than God losing grip. They would rather die than serve perfection. Sue touched his gauntlet, warmth real though love sculpted, and answered softly, "Perhaps they do not wish to serve." Doom flinched. Gods do not flinch, but men do. He dismissed her gently, then turned toward throne again, metal boots echoing like funerary drum, and power rolled off him like black tide. He felt Reed Richards like splinter in divine flesh, and yet he could not bring himself to crush him. Not immediately, not brutally, for to destroy Reed without confrontation would taste like fear. Across Battleworld, forces gathered not in armies but in clusters. Champions, kings, thieves, children of universes, now dust. Black Panther and Namor walked side by side, not as allies, not as friends, but as rulers bound by common enemy. Hatred and respect sat in silence between them like third companion. Star-Lord hummed under breath, fingers twitching in nerves disguised as swagger, while Carol Danvers clenched glowing fists, jaw set like soldier whose mission was already paid for in grief. And then, deep beneath Doom's throne, Reed and Molecule Man worked not to destroy God, but to unhook him, to pull thread on which entire false cosmos hung. Molecule Man, once puppet, now smirked through starvation, delighted by chaos creeping like ivy through divine architecture. "You can feel it, can't you?" he whispered to Reed. "He's scared." Reed didn't smile. Empathy blocked arrogance from triumph. "He's alone," he answered softly. "Fear grows in solitude." Molecule Man tilted head, intrigued. "You plan to save him too?" Reed closed eyes. "I plan to free everyone, even him." Because Reed did not want throne, he wanted world with no throne. Doom reacted first not with hammer nor sword, but decree, commanding Thor Core to crush Rising. Descent before spark became blaze, but Core fractured mid-air like glass struck by song of truth. The loyal Thors marched, the awakened hesitated, and hesitation in divine army is balm waiting to blossom. Doom then summoned life he stole, the Cabal from ultimate raft, world enders who had survived collapse, trying to weaponize apocalypse against rebellion, sending Ebony Maw, Black Swan, and others to hunt Richards. But Doom underestimated chaos he unleashed, for villains smell weakness in gods more sharply than angels do, and they moved not to serve but to seize advantage. And in wastes where shield rose like corpse wall across horizon, Thanos stood before Doom's zombies and declared to world not in rage but calm, "Your god is false, and a false god falls." He marched into Deadlands, claiming army of death as weapon not of salvation but vengeance, intending to cut path through Doom's rule. Doom saw Titan rise and did not fear power, he feared symbolism, for tyrants do not fear armies, they fear ideas that do not die. Then came moment battle began, not with blast but question. Miles Morales, young heart beating with hope larger than cosmos lost, looked at Reed and asked trembling, "Can we really win?" Reed placed hand on his shoulder and answered not with certainty but conviction, "We don't need to win, we need to be true." And that was difference between Doom's world and world worth living in. Doom sought victory. Reed sought truth. Forces marched. Air cracked. Ground shook as power clashed with purpose. And in Castle Doom, Victor donned armor not as God preparing war, but man preparing confrontation with only equal he ever knew. He whispered Strange's name like prayer he could never speak aloud. Then mask sealed. Lightning formed. Sky split open. Doom soared into war of truths. Battleworld trembled as gods and mortals collided. Thors striking phoenix fire. Hulks roaring in Maestro's realm. Deadlands breaking as death spilled forward. Hyperion shattered by cosmic blast, energy flaring across stitched sky. Yet in chaos one truth rang clearer than thunder. This was not fight for land or power. This was reckoning between two visions of existence. Doom struck ground, earth bending under cosmic will, and all fell silent around him. Reed stepped forward, alone, unarmed, not warrior but witness. Doom's voice cut air like blade. You challenge a god. Reed's voice answered like quiet storm. No, I challenge a man who forgot he was one. And silence spread like flame. Doom's fist tightened, power trembling like star caged in fist. But Doom did not strike, not yet, because Reed did not come to destroy him. Reed came to reveal him, and in gods, revelation is death sharper than any blade. Battleworld held breath. Mortals waited. Thors hovered uncertain. Barons froze in hesitation. Doom and Richards faced each other like anchor points of reality, one built on pride, one on humility, opposites bound by fate. Older than universes they fought to save, war did not roar, it whispered. Because rising against a god is not act of violence, it is act of remembering truth deeper than any throne. No one deserves eternity alone. And Doom, the lowercase Doom, the one waiting for gods who forget themselves, began to move. Not destruction, not punishment, but unraveling. For revolt had begun, not with armies, but recognition. And a god who can be seen is a god who can fall. And Victor von Doom, feeling world shift beneath feet forged from certainty, finally understood the most terrifying thing existence can offer. A world ready to live without him. Chapter 14. The Fall of a Throne of Lies. Empires fall not when armies breach their walls, but when the truth finally refuses to kneel. And on Battleworld, as Reed Richards stood before Victor von Doom, before a god sculpted from fear, genius, and the raw, impossible will of a wounded man determined to master destiny, the universe held its breath, because this confrontation was not war, nor vengeance, nor rebellion, but a reckoning written into the very bones of existence long before worlds died and stars choked on silence. It was the collision of two philosophies, one built on belief that salvation must be controlled, and the other built on faith that salvation must be earned. And in that suspended moment between heartbeat and collapse, Doom looked upon Reed and saw not rival but mirror, a reflection of everything he might have been had he chosen humility over supremacy. The skies of Battleworld rippled with energy as Doom's will pressed against the very fabric of the realm he created, swirling storms across continents and turning stone to molten fury beneath his boots. Yet Reed remained still, posture calm, eyes steady, not challenging Doom as enemy, but addressing him as equal in pain and burden. You built this, Reed spoke quietly, voice neither accusing nor praising but acknowledging, and it is magnificent. And Doom faltered, because Reed meant it, because Reed saw the beauty inside the lie, saw the desperate hope stitched into every mountain and lake and dreamed Doom formed, understood the agony behind omnipotence. But it is yours, Reed continued, gentler still, not theirs. Doom's anger surged like thunder, desperate to drown a whisper of truth. Divine armor bristled, cosmic power flared along his gauntlets like burning galaxies, and he roared not from hatred but from grief. I saved them. I preserved what you could not. And Reed did not deny it, because denial would have been cruelty. You did, Reed answered, voice trembling not with fear but empathy. But saving people doesn't make them yours. Around them, Battleworld cracked, the shield walls splintered under weight of zombie hordes and Ultron legions spilling forth in hungry tide. Thanos marched upon Doom's fortress, wielding stolen army of the damned, laughing hollow laugh that echoed as both prophecy and mockery. You are not God, Titan hissed as he ascended Doom's dais moments earlier. You merely stole power from one, and Doom, tired of masks, disintegrated him with one effortless gesture, not from threat but irritation, then turned back to Reed with breath shaking beneath steel, because Thanos' words meant nothing, but Reed's presence meant everything. The rebel Thors clashed against loyal ones above cracked spires, hammers ringing across broken sky like orchestra of judgment, lightning fracturing heavens. Doom painted, while Valeria, brilliant girl born into deceit, watched with dawning clarity, realizing the world she studied. Like perfect equation was built upon flaw. Perfection enforced cannot be truth, only tyranny disguised as order. Susan Storm, standing beside Doom, moments earlier, felt wind shift and memory stir, saw Reed's face not as intruder, but as ghost tugging at heart long suppressed, and confusion, a more dangerous force than rebellion, rose in her like tide. Franklin paused in shaping Pocket Universe for play, sensing tension older than creation humming in the air. Molecule Man, deep beneath, smiled, crooked, starving, impatient, amused, because all of this, every bit of it, was story he had watched unfold across countless realities, and in every one, Doom and Reed circled each other like destiny, and doubt dancing toward inevitable truth. Doom advanced, power rippling, each step cracking ground, each breath making air tremble, yet he did not strike first, and that hesitation betrayed him more than any wound could. Reed stood unarmed, unarmored, unaugmented, and it was not strength of fists, but strength of spirit that threatened Doom. You think you should have been chosen, Reed whispered, voice steady with painful understanding. But no one was chosen. There was no chosen. Doom's mask, forged to hide scars and pride alike, seemed to tighten, metal straining as if soul behind it burned. I was better, Doom hissed, and pain in those words laid bare truth. No worshipper could deny Doom did not seek godhood because he believed himself divine, but because he could not bear universe choosing Reed Richards over him. But Reed did not fight with condemnation. He fought with truth. You were strong enough to do this, he said, gesturing to the world around them. Fractured beauty trembling in divine storm. But strength alone cannot make a world right. It must belong to everyone, not one man. Doom's fury erupted not as beam or blast, but wave of force bending horizon, pulling mountains upward like breaths sucked from stone. And Battleworld groaned, skies tearing open, false constellations scattering like frightened birds, gravity trembling, continents shifting. Mortals across land fell to knees, not in worship, but in terror. Barons cowered, Thors faltered mid-air, Susan clutched heart as if remembering someone she never should have forgotten. Doom's voice boomed across realms. This world is mine because no other could save it. And Reed answered, not with triumph, but with the most devastating compassion any god could face. But you didn't save it for them, Victor. You saved it so you wouldn't lose. Doom staggered, one step, silent, weight of eternity suddenly heavy, unbearable. And then truth crystallized, not in words, not in battle, but in Molecule Man's chamber below, where Reed and Doom's destinies collided through conduit of stolen power. Owen Reese looked at Doom, at Reed, two men forged by brilliance and loss, one hardened by pride, one by responsibility, and he asked simple question. Who should have this power? Doom answered instantly, reflex driven by lifetime of insecurity. Me. Reed hesitated, pain, humility, fear, acceptance swirling in eyes and whispered, no one, But if anyone must, then someone who does not want it. That was answer. God's fear. Molecule Man grinned, and power shifted. Not in explosion, not in scream, in surrender of illusion. Doom's armor crackled, flickered, failed, mask denting as divine energy bled like dying star's last breath. Reed stood steady. White light swallowed halls, but this time not to annihilate, this time to restore. Doom fell to knees, not in defeat, but exhaustion, and mask cracked open, revealing scarred face twisted not by rage but heartbreak. Was I wrong? Doom whispered, voice small, human, raw. And Reed, kneeling with him, touched his shoulder, not victor to vanquished, but friend to wounded, answering with terrible kindness. You tried to save everyone. That was never wrong. You just didn't trust anyone else to help you. Doom closed eyes, grief flooding like tide swallowing shore. Could you have done better? He asked, wounded, like child, asking mother if he failed her. And Reed answered truthfully, painfully, humbly, no, but I would have tried different. And in that moment, Doom's heart broke. Not because he lost universe, but because he realized he could have shared burden all along. Battleworld unraveled around them, not collapsing, but dissolving into possibility. Susan's false love faded like dream at dawn, and she blinked tears she did not fully understand. Franklin's pocket universes flickered as seeds of real ones awaited rebirth. Thor corpse lowered hammers in reverence not to God but justice. Namor bowed head not in submission but solemn respect for truth hard-earned. Black Panther closed fingers around Time Gem, feeling future breathe again. Miles Morales whispered goodbye to world, ending twice in one lifetime, heartbreaking but believing in next dawn. And Doom, stripped not of power but veneer, whispered confession Reed had waited entire life to hear. Richard, you were right. Reed didn't smile. Victory over wounded man does not taste sweet. He simply answered, let's build it right this time. And with that, Throne of Lies crumbled, not in flame, but forgiveness. The god fell, the man remained, and the universe, for first time since it died, exhaled. Chapter 15. Let there be worlds again. Creation does not return in thunder or flame, not in triumphant fanfare nor triumphant roar. It returns in breath, in memory, in the gentle hum of possibility, as Reed Richards, no longer one man among many, but the steward of existence reborn, stood in the bright, pure white of aftermath, holding power stolen not for conquest but for restoration, and looked into the infinite nothing that once frightened even gods, and saw not void but canvas. The world Doom made dissolved like frost touched by dawn, not destroyed but released, each fragment of Battleworld drifting like snowflakes into the vastness of what could be, each stolen life finding path not back to what was, but forward to what must come. Victor Von Doom, stripped of omnipotence but not dignity, stood bruised before Reed, not as tyrant nor god nor rival, but as man who dared to bear weight of eternity, and rose beneath its impossible demand. And Reed, soft-eyed, tired, resolute, did not gloat, did not judge, did not triumph. Instead, he extended hand not in victory but recognition, and Doom, pride fractured but spirit unbroken, took it. There was no forgiveness spoken, only understanding, and sometimes that is more sacred than apology. Will you repair your face? Reed asked quietly, not out of pity but respect. And Doom, touching cracked mask with bare, scarred hand, murmured with weary dignity, no, for once I am content to be seen. That was fall and redemption both, not in miracle, but honesty, the kind Reed offered freely and Doom learned painfully. Below and above and within them, the white void waited, not hungry this time, but curious. watching Reed and Owen Reese, molecule man, the keystone of everything, stand side by side. Owen, strange and fragile and omnipotent in fractured way, grinned like child given entire sky to paint and said, "So what do we make first?" Reed did not answer with command, but principle. We rebuild everything, every world, every life, not as they were, but as they could be. Deep truth. Reed did not recreate past. He restored multiverse's ability to grow, to evolve, to fracture and heal, to expand without design. His power flowed not like storm, but like river through parched earth, and from nothingness new universes blossomed, each one a spark, a bubble, a dawn forming in silence. Stars ignited like first heartbeat of cosmos. Quantum foam danced, singing physics into existence. Dimensions unfolded like petals. Realities branched like trees drinking cosmic morning light. Infinity returned not in singular blaze but constellation of beginnings, each one precious, fragile, beautiful. In one newborn universe, Franklin Richards shaped galaxies like toys in divine sandbox, laughter echoing across nebula. In another, Valeria mapped laws of reality with curiosity that could humble gods. In countless others, beings evolved unaware that existence was gift from flawed hands, because true divinity does not demand worship, it gives freely and vanishes. Reed did not do this alone. Every universe seeded by family he loved, by children born not to rule but imagine. Sue Storm returned not as stolen queen of false paradise, but as mother, wife, partner, standing beside Reed with quiet pride. And Reed looked at her with tears unfallen. The universe died and came back, yet his greatest miracle was simply holding her hand. Johnny blazed across newborn sky, laughing like wildfire tasting oxygen. Ben Grimm walked surface of moon in another universe, stone skin warm under artificial sunrise, whispering gratitude for second chance his heart barely dared to believe real. They did not remember Battleworld fully, memories softened like dream, truths held but not weighted, but they felt ache in souls like faint echo of storm survived. Reed, Sue, their children, their family, first architects of tomorrow, not gods, only guardians of hope. Back in restored worlds, heroes awoke with hearts heavy from something they couldn't name. Spider-Man blinked, holding web shooters with hands that remembered dust but did not tremble. T'Challa breathed in Wakandan dawn, richer than any heaven. Namor tasted salt water with pride, sovereignty, and loneliness still burning like ocean's heart. But knowing somewhere, Richards lived and Doom learned, and that was strange comfort. Carol Danvers woke ready to fly, always rising. Miles Morales returned to a world that was not his, yet still welcomed him, because Owen Reese, mischievous and cosmic, placed him gently in Earth 601 like final quiet joke against fate. And Miles, feeling both belonging and loss, whispered promise to honor those gone. Across cosmos, beings who survived remembered nothing sharp, only sensed that something grand and terrible had happened, and they were loved enough to return. And Doom Victor awoke not in palace nor shrine, but small chamber in Latveria, mask gone, scars bare, power faded, except spark in eyes that no failure could extinguish. He touched cloak not as god but sovereign, humble yet proud, knowing universe lived not because he was perfect, but because he was stubborn enough to try. He looked to mirror and saw man beneath legend, and for first time did not turn away. He whispered Reed's name not in envy but respect. Somewhere quiet, Reed whispered Victor's in return, not in fear but forgiveness. Rivalry reshaped into bittersweet fraternity, carved across multiverses' bones. Creation continued, expanding outward like breath in newborn lungs. Universes birthed universes, cycles spun, destiny unfolded not by decree but freedom. Marvel Multiverse was not restored to old shape. It was reborn as different, unpredictable, alive in a way no god could design, because Reed Richards chose to trust existence instead of command it. There was no throne, no crown, no monument carved in cosmic marble. Only choice, humble, gentle, astonishingly brave, the choice to let life happen without certainty. Reed and his family drifted through newborn Omniverse not as rulers but gardeners, overseers not of destiny but potential, each world touched by promise. Nothing once broken must stay broken. Doom walked his nation with heavy but steady steps, learning peace through imperfection. Strange's sacrifice echoed in stars, his memory blessing rather than haunting. Molecule Man existed everywhere and nowhere, laughing into eternity like child hiding triumph behind crumbs of cosmic cake. The Beyonders? Gone lesson, not threat. The living tribunal returned, reformed by order itself. Eternity breathed again, infinity stretched, death smiled, reborn purpose regained, life seeded worlds, balance restored not by force but compassion. No song marked renewal, no monument stands to Reed or Doom or Strange or Titan. Creation's return was quiet because true miracles do not roar, they breathe. In final moment before dispersing into structure of Omniverse he resurrected, Reed looked upon blank horizon and spoke not command but gratitude. We get another chance, he whispered, not to stars, not to gods, but to existence itself. And universe answered not in words but light. And so everything began again, not perfect, not controlled, not certain, alive. And that is enough. Because eternity's greatest truth is not power, it is possibility. And possibility, once returned, is wonder no god can own. And so ends this telling. The multiverse lives, Doom walks humble, Strange rests a saint, Reed becomes quiet architect of dawn. Worlds rise, worlds fall, heroes forget and remember, but creation, fragile and fierce, continues, forever reborn not through dominance, but hope made real. Let there be worlds again, and let them grow. And let us never forget the cost of trying to hold eternity in one man's hand.